glorious day of Slayer.
Okay. Um.
This is RS3. I don't give a shit about RS3. I wish that I did, because I mean, I have like almost the maxed account. But all those abilities and shit. I don't know. The most important part of playing OSRS is finding second monitor content to watch while you play.
Have a chance at getting one of them. But let's say it wasn't armor, and I agree with you. I mean, I kind of feel like the cape slot is a little bit overplayed for the best in slot untradables at this point. Do you have an idea of what would maybe make another cool option for like a slot, like a
Oh,
ring, gloves, if you could stick it anywhere?
it might be one of the cases that it needs to be something a bit like Lightbearer that's not really interacting with main stats. Something that isn't going to just be a permanent, I slap it on my boot slot, like a new boot, for example, that gives you, you can run like 4 tiles in a tick or something. As funny as it would be, I mean, it would have the same effect as Lightbearer. It would be very overpowered in some places, but wouldn't swamp the entirety of the gearing that players do. So if it's ever going to be a slot that isn't a cape, it would probably have to be something along those lines. As for balancing and ideas, I have genuinely got no idea, and that's another thing that I think needs a stupid amount of discussion because Lightbearer, as it stands, has broken the game and continues to this day. So it's a very scary thing that the first iteration is that strong. And while you could nerf it, even if you nerf the Lightbearer by 50%, it's probably still going to make an appearance in some setups. Very scary potential for Abyss like that to overtake and more or less knock out the other items. So has to at the very least
I've never used a
fit in
light bearer, so I have no
without
idea.
devaluing them.
So I want to just like throw an idea out here, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying for anyone listening, this is not like a serious suggestion. So calm down. I can already see like people pulling out their pitchforks.
Yeah.
But what if the reward was something like an item where you could combine the light bearer with any other ring that you want? And the reason that
Ring.
I ask that is because if you were able to do that, that then would not mean that that ring is the only ring that you would ever use. You would ideally want to have a best in slot mage ring with the light bearer integrated with it, a range ring, a melee ring. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, Ring of the Suffering Archery God imbued. Yes. Uh, as much, I don't know. I like the idea. I haven't given too much thought into the whole balancing idea of it, and I suppose you could make you could argue that with
I,
Lightbearer, what if you just combine it with every ring? Can you have a
I,
Lightbearer
I
with
should look
an
this
Archer's
light bearer up
Lightbearer,
actually.
a melee ring Lightbearer? What's the limit on that? And overall, if you did that, if it was all the rings, then you have to get all the rings. You have to get tons of Lightbearers as well. Potentially an issue for where the new item comes from. It feels like it's hella complex, really. But the sound of the item is fantastic, I guess. It sounds powerful and fun. So if it's going to be like a raid reward or something like that, maybe Colosseum's not quite up to scratch, but if it's a raid reward, I think they have to do, and this is a cool topic as well, but they have to do something like that. They have to give us something very out the box, um, something that's clearly as powerful as a mega rare weapon. And that's kind of the point, right? Like all the mega rares are taken right now. Maybe that reward space is open for it.
Oh, some special attack
Other
shit.
suggestions are like instead of adding a combination ring, add a second ring slot. We have 10 fingers, so it's been proposed several times. Like just give us another ring slot. Other games have ring slots and jewelry slots and like earring slots.
Hold on, I need to read about this ring because they're saying that it's so broken, but I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not a real big like special attack user. I guess I don't know. I mean, does it just let me spam Dragon Warhammer specs? I don't. If that's the case. That sounds pretty nice, but I highly doubt it allows that. Let me see here. Using preserve. What the fuck? I don't know. Reading about the library, it doesn't. Who cares? I don't know. Anyway,
And stuff.
doesn't seem that
There's plenty of
broken to me.
potential for socketing items as well, gem slots. You can call it whatever you want. You can make it up. And if it's going to come from a new raid, then as far as they're concerned, it's open reward space, which is good because they're running out. So I don't know. A raid tier thing, sure, and I'd like to see slots or multiple of these things work. Had a look at least. The only issue, if Lightbearer is considered so strong you must wear it, and you get 2 ring slots, Lightbearer permanently sits in one. You still only have 1 ring slot, really, but I don't know. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's just how it is.
First of all, I absolutely love the idea that like you finish this crazy 12 wave encounter and then your character just unlocks the knowledge that oh yeah, I have a second
I've got 2
hand.
hands. It's a funny thought, yeah.
I think
Out of nowhere.
whatever they decide to put as the reward for this, I would personally really love this to have a unique mechanic instead of just being a best in slot stat upgrade. I think that items like the Light Bearer, like the Elysian Spirit Shield, like the Blood Fury that offer some sort of interesting out of the box mechanic that's not just directly tied to stats is far more interesting than just a best in slot upgrade.
Yeah. As long as it goes through a few iterations of beta world testing, ideally they work with some of the guys who, like, for example, run the stat spreadsheets or like the super high end stuff that it's really going to affect them. That getting just relevant feedback, and they've been getting better at it. They do it all the time. So I have faith that something like that can make it into the game. Need some ideas. Maybe that's something for the comments, right? Just like throw it out there, see what it's like. And this is the thing, because it's so hard to come up with something, but this might just be one of those things where you throw 100 ideas on the table and sift through them, and eventually one's like, that's it, that's fine. I got none of them. I got 10 bad ideas. That's about it for now.
Yeah, I like that. If anyone has any cool ideas, definitely drop them in the comments because I think trying to brainstorm those new best in slot items that are like creative mechanics is one of the most fun things to sift through and discuss in Theorycraft. So definitely drop them below. Speaking of the upper waves in this new Coliseum, let's say waves 10 and 11, not quite the final wave yet. What are
Maybe
some
we
good
just slow down on adding
PVM
new
encounters
content.
that Jagex should be taking elements from to incorporate into their design for those waves?
I'm writing this one down. Good mechanics for super high waves. Um, oh, I'll deviate from this slightly by saying that a lot of the truly interesting mechanics and the depth that a lot of content offers is generated from movement. And when you consider what's available to you to manipulate in the game, your character's position comes up. Like clicking to move your character is truly fundamental. Switching your gear is truly fundamental. And your prayers. Those 3 things come up as the major 3 aspects of how you interact with the game world, especially for PVMing. There are some few other things, but those are the main ones. And of those, the one that has the most depth and sort of interest tends to be how you move. Um, a lot of the greatest mechanics in the game, for example, the whole of Ulm, more or less, especially in solos, is purely driven by your pathing, how you control your movement in relation to the tiles available, and all these methods like 4 to 1, 4 to 0, 7 3. Just everything is reliant on a movement in particular. And it's something that, in particular, you can force players to do. And when you look at like Warden Skulls, for example, super fun mechanic, the fun mechanics also rely on this. So if we're going to talk about both good and fun mechanics and mechanics that have high depth, it needs to be movement related. It has to force your character to do something in the game world. Um, it could just be like clicking orbs at Warden, that's fine. But also like corrupted gauntlet, regular gauntlet, where the floor changes and you're forced to move position, and be aware not just of your current position, but where you might want to move to, or if you're in a position where you're going to get swamped, you have to take some preemptive movement. It's a decision making thing as well. You can say you can talk about some of that for gear. For example, you know an attack is coming, you need to put on tank gear. This doesn't really exist in the game right now. It's more so maybe like put on a prayer, but you can do the same thing for tank gear down the road as well. So a lot of these sort of forced actions work quite well,
For
but
some
it's
reason, my
purely movement
camera always like
basically.
unfocuses and it gets pretty
Um,
annoying.
a lot of the mechanics these days tend to be stolen, and the term they like to use is reflavored, which is fantastic. That's more or less what it is. I mean, it's a point and click game using a mouse. Everything is reflavored, and that's completely okay as long as it feels and tastes different. And DT2 especially, all of these bosses, the four DT2 bosses, are very next generation bosses. I think they each have a little bit that play into movement, rhythmic cycles, bit of gear switching, bit of knowledge of what's going on, and they all feel like very complete encounters. And maybe the only thing they kind of lack is a bit of depth, a bit of abusability. There's almost only one way to really fight them, and it's a strange complaint to have for a game to say that it's almost well built, too well built to not have variation. But it's something that's come up quite a lot in more recent times. Like, there's only really one way to do these things, and that maybe is a bit boring. You can kill them quickly and slowly, but not differently. Um, so I don't know. Maybe that's a weird one. A bit like how, as an example, you can mage Zorro to death. It's a bit slower and it's not great. You could also just Tebow AFK it, but you could also take max mage and range and really do it properly. But these all really work. If I go to Duke and start maging it, I am gonna die to event before I get the kill. I would presume. Maybe you can with the shadow these days. But there's a bit less sort of, I guess, depth to it because of that now. But yeah.
Yeah, I really love that conceptually. I think the challenge that Jagex has to grapple with there is that players are always going to be looking for what's the meta, what's the most efficient way to do this. And one example that comes to mind is I remember watching your stream when the Awaken boss is released. You did Vardorvis differently than everyone else. You didn't want to do the axe skipping. You wanted to move around the arena, whereas everyone else was doing the axe skipping technique. And while that was really interesting to see you kind of like put your own spin on it and differ from the other people who are sort of vying for the world first clear there, ultimately, I think probably 95% of people will always settle towards the path of least resistance. And
Oh yeah.
I don't know from a game design standpoint, from Jagex's standpoint, like how you can introduce an encounter that doesn't just have one sort of best path.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't really know where to go with this because I more or less agree that players will choose the path of least resistance. If there's something easy that works, fantastic. And yes, you can do better things. You can add more gear switches and whatnot. But really, I mean, if it works, it works. If it feels good, it feels good. I mean, if something is super easy, you're just going to do the super easy thing instead of the super hard thing.
So
Now,
can I throw
yeah,
something out there really quick?
sure.
What if there were multiple ways to approach a boss, and one of them was easier than the others, but Jagex is implementing a system where they're looking at what decision you make, and if you choose the harder one, then maybe you have more reward potential, or maybe you get an extra benefit in the form of, I don't know, a defense buff or a DPS buff. Um, what about would a system like that work for any encounter?
That's just like needlessly
I feel like that's
complicated.
already inbuilt into PVM in the sense that it is just a gear diff. If you choose to T-bow Zora, you are going to have a slower kill. You are going to have problems with potentially HP if the kill is longer. You're going to have problems with the rotation because you're choosing to do slower damage at the cost of less input. You're going to have more rotations to learn and deal with.
True.
So in
Yeah,
part that's already built into PVM, but trying to actually directly build it into an encounter,
it's
it's
stupid.
a bit like TOA, where even if you give players the choice of invocation, they are eventually going to settle on a very distinct path. And I don't think there's any way to get around this because for them, that is the path of least resistance. You can't implement choice
Just
in that sense.
just choose the easiest route.
But I'm down to see more examples of it. Maybe TOA just did it badly. I'm not convinced it would
I
be
mean, your average person plays MMOs not because they're hard, but because they're easy.
the choice that players think it is.
This is going off a little bit on a tangent, but since we've
Mhm.
kind of like danced around this TOA invocation system a few times, what could Jagex do at this point to improve TOA? Is it introduce more invocations? Is it sort of
Mm.
revisit the core system fundamentals? What can they
Probably
do?
fine the way it is,
This
honestly.
one comes up a lot every day, and a lot of players have been saying at the start of TOA they promised to add invocations. I think it was more close to we could add invocations and we might explore it later, but no real promise. Partially maybe selling the content, selling the idea. It doesn't really matter. But but for the same reason that players would simply adapt to it and add it to their TOA invocation list and just do it, it doesn't really change the nature of the fight. And unless they're going to have a weekly system for doing something like that, where players have to adapt to that on the weekly, which feels very forced,
Oh
that's
my
probably
god.
not going to play out as well as they would think. Um, I don't mind new invocations being added, but we come back to the balance issue of too many invocation points and how to filter them and how to choose which ones. If they're just adding them, that's a big problem. They would have to probably replace things in its entirety and force you to make a choice between them and another invocation that you might have not used up until now, um, which might actually be forcing players in a bad direction to. It's like you're either going to make the raid slightly harder or slightly easier. In both ways, players are going to complain that it's too easy now or it's too hard. You can't. I don't know. It's pleasing too few people at the same time. It's a bit of a waste of time. My stance on it nowadays is like
Who the fuck says
ignore the
it's too
invocations for
easy?
TOA. TOA is fine. You're going to do it no matter what. If you want to do it, just do it. If you don't, don't. Adding new invocations might hook you for 2 days and then you realize it's the same. So stop and start to ask for new content because new content's always going to be way more interesting, a way better focus for players. And really, that's it. Like if it's not going to get new players into TOA. It's not going to do anything for the content that it's not already doing.
Do you think they should at least try to address, for example, I know they tried to do a fix recently with the Monkey Wave room and it was not very well received. I know there's other complaints that balancing around mechanics like Red X for Baba at high invocations isn't great. Similar complaints, but less so maybe about Akka and some of the techniques used there. Any additional changes from like a room perspective that should be made at this point?
I'm more or less in the same position that I don't think changing these things would introduce new players to the content. And if anything, it's something that only existing players would see the difference in the first place. So it's the same position for invocations where I don't think it really does anything in the long run. Now, you can make the argument that Baba is genuinely unfun, and trying to make something more fun is really important. That's for sure, it matters. But players have kind of got into the groove, and nowadays I don't think it's like if someone says to me, should I be red Xing Baba? The answer is you can learn it, and it's a nice skill to learn it. It is a bit of depth at the end of the day. It's not going anywhere, so let's stop complaining about it, perhaps, and just embrace it as a mechanic you can learn. But Baba is, if anything, easier doing it with the boulders if you position Baba. I don't see any of the other mechanics in the raid, like Akka Butterfly, to be maybe it's strong, it's worth learning, but it's at least it's depth. And a lot of these things come down to its interesting depth. Like, for example, wave skipping at Zebak. It's actually fun. It doesn't matter if these things are a bit broken or a bit imbalanced. It's a bit of fun, it's a bit of depth, and that's okay. So trying to patch out Red X or trying to improve rooms in that sense might actually devalue a lot of what the content currently is. more than actually help players and make them see it as something more.
So you said something important a minute ago, which was if we're looking at it from a fun perspective, that's maybe a different conversation. And at least from a Baba perspective, when I was doing my 450 kit runs, I did not opt for Red X.
Yeah.
One, because I think it's kind of just an annoying mechanic, but it also is just a very repetitive and uninteresting mechanic, in my opinion, for that room at least, where you are essentially repeating the same short cycle on loop until the boss is clear, and then you're not actually engaging with the core mechanics of the boss at that point.
That
If
sounds
they were
amazing.
to at least introduce an option to where maybe Baba doesn't hit through prayer to the same extent that he does at the upper levels currently, or introduce some sort of way to interact with that boss in a more fair and interesting way, but also still offer the ability to red exit if you want to. Is that an improvement from a fun standpoint if
The fuck
we
is he
make
even
that
asking?
change?
I guess this is more like fundamental to should the room have a not like a complete overhaul, but a redesign to the fundamental mechanics of engaging with Baba?
Yeah.
The short answer is yes. I think it would be really fun to explore some different options. Um, one example, let's have an example. When I was at playtesting for TOA, I saw Baba and thought this is quite plain. It is really just I stand there, I click, I tank, I go through a boulder. It's kind of it. It's a plain room, and it's okay to have some stuff that's not as interesting. But this was insanely dull for what I thought it was. My immediate suggestion was make it a reactive boss. So a bit how like Warden is reactive, it shoots off and then it shoots his arm to the side and then bang, and you can react to the position of his arm and you know where to go. Do something like that for Baba. Make it a bit more interactive. Baba raises its right arm and slams the ground. You get out the way of its arm. You're not even reacting to a telegraph. I mean, there's no ground telegraphing. It's like an animation telegraph. That's something I think would be really fun. I love reaction content. But it has to be balanced between, and I'll transition this to the nightmare problem. The nightmare problem is the idea that Nightmare Fight is actually really good, but Nightmare has this potential to just melee you randomly for like a 60. And in some cases, that's either going to kill you or make the fight way harder because you bring less food for the fight, because the fight's practically zero damage. And if you have things that are reaction based, it's okay to have them, but not all the time. So these kind of mechanics are great, but they have to be very careful as to how much they are presenting throughout the fight. Nightmare is the entire fight. There's no point at which it can't just run up to you and be like, bam. So you have to be on a lookout for it. And for players who are engaging in learning the content and getting used to it, that's really frustrating. You don't want to be paying 100% attention to a dangerous thing the whole time. But if they do go that method, then great, I guess. Maybe have it for 30-second intervals. And then if you get past it, it switches style. It changes a bit to like a bit of the standard Baba that we know today. That's a lot of work, though. And as much as I appreciate
Sounds
that
like
would
a
be
lot
a
of work.
fun and more interactive version of Baba, the question fundamentally is, would that time be better spent on new content? And again, would the players at TOA really just who are like, grinding TOA long term? They know how Baba is. I accept Baba at this point in time, and I've only done about I've done a lot. I've done about 700 KC at this point. Relatively, that's a lot. But at this point in time, I just accept it. I get on with it. I don't really care. It's a room that in teams it's okay. There's less for a single person to do. You just kind of stand there, click, and it's over. You start to add those mechanics. If anything, it's going to be more frustrating for the players who are actually long-term grinding it. So again, to tie it back in, even from the fun perspective, even though that might be a good rework, I think new content is the play.
Fair enough. I want to take it back for one last Coliseum question.
Yeah.
And whenever you have a wave-based encounter, you're always working up to that final wave where there's a huge boss that you have to take on for the very last challenge.
Mhm.
If you can do anything you want to design the final boss encounter, what do you make that encounter look like?
Oh gosh.
Not
This
a
is
bunch of random shit
yeah.
happening.
And
I
forget
would
about
love to
trying
see.
to scale
Mhm.
this to like, intermediate players or advanced players. Just
Just
like for you personally, it can look like anything you want it to.
okay. It's going to be a moth boss first of all. It's going to have giant flappy wings, and it's going to be razor sharp. And when it telegraphs towards you, you're going to have to react to that, and you're going to have to react within a tick. Maybe the zero
Oh
tick
fuck yeah!
Leviathan timing for the movement. I love reaction-based content, and I think other people do too.
No,
It's
fuck no.
there's not many examples of it in game, and
What do you mean?
I guess it kind of shows
Everything's
because
reaction.
the amount of sheer struggle that players had with zero tick
I mean, have you never done Leviathan? Like the fuck?
Leviathan, when in reality it was like you do a bit of practice on the regular boss, and then after maybe 3 hours of practice, even on like day two, I was able to do it, not with consistency, but do it. And nowadays, I do my regular kills on zero tick because it's not that bad. But it goes to show how sort of new the player base is to that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, you've been
we have
playing the
some
game
now
for
with Warden,
fucking
I
20
suppose.
years.
If sort of, it's a bit. You can track it if you want to, but you can also stand at the front and just dodge, and it's okay. So let's start with that. I'd love to see more reaction-based content. I'd love to see more telegraph, which is what Warden does. It still throws out its arm. That's the telegraph. It's
Yeah,
telling you where it's going to go.
yeah, telegraphing is good because then you
Very
can
common in other
fucking
bosses. So let's
actually
add a
react
telegraph
without
reaction-based
memorizing.
attack. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see some more love for Scythe. Can we make it a 3x3 and have Scythe at least be useful for a phase? That's a different thing entirely, but Scythe is extremely undervalued. I'd love to see it have more use cases through content. And let's have it be susceptible to Scythe, which means 3x3. Decently sized boss. As far as other stuff, maybe more dodging again, not necessarily like telegraphed dodging, but you can throw all sorts of things at a player, and again, movement is a really important part of this. So it's very tricky, especially with the likes of Ulm, where Ulm was almost just a random happy moment design wise. It wasn't really super planned to have all these methods work. That's tricky because I'd love to see some of it present in the new boss as well. But yeah, more movement stuff, more telegraphed reaction stuff. It needs to play into this idea of movement, prayer flicking, and gear switching as well. So it should contain all three. I don't a bit like how the DT2 bosses currently, most of them
Jesus, just
don't
kill my
play
wrist, though,
into
don't you?
all three. Duke, for example, you don't do any gear switching. It's just melee with a spec weapon.
That's probably why he's the best
Whisperer,
fucking
no
boss.
gear switching. Actually, maybe it's just gear switching that I have. Maybe it is. Leviathan, no gear switching. Yeah, maybe it's a gear switching problem then. But Leviathan, no gear switching. Okay, it's a gear switching problem. But
Yeah,
none of
gear
Hard Orcs
switching.
either.
Gear switching sucks ass, dude.
But I'd love to see more of that. So those bosses are nearly fantastic,
Oh my
minus that
god,
aspect, which I think is really fun to play with. So let's add that. Let's make sure there's
that's
an
not.
equal amount, at least, of each of those three things going on as well. Beyond that, I don't know. Let's add two more things. One is an insta kill
Jesus.
mechanic, and I would like this to be generated from a DPS check. And I'm pretty interested and invested in this. There are lots of DPS checks, more so at TOA as the new raid. We have some in the Scarab room through the Mage Scarab. You have some at Akka from the Shadows at Akka. And I guess you have
Yeah, let's do more DPS checks and more. Let's do more speed run shit too, because yeah, that's fun.
a soft DPS check for some stuff. For example, Obelisk in a way, and also the Core Wardens. It plays softly into a few places, but the big one is like Mage Scarab. When you attack and Akka Shadows, when you attack these NPCs, you roll 0 to your max hit. Sometimes you noodle, and you get punished, and it's not fun.
No shit.
P2 Warden has the formula where it takes your accuracy and your max hit and gives you a more standard MMO formula for damage. Basically, it's an average hit plus or minus 10%. Giving that a bit more showtime in some of these new bosses, like let's say this my preferred tailored boss, having that as a mechanic, especially for DPS checks, not the whole fight, but especially DPS checks, will allow you to force players, and again, this idea of forcing players to have
God.
good movement, good gear switching,
Forcing players.
to have,
Fun.
let's say it's like an orb that the Warden drops, but this is the new boss. Now you have to get your gear on in time. Now you have to get your prayers on in time. You can't be underpotted. Forcing players to do like really high level
Yeah, forcing players to be tick perfect. Oh, that's fun.
actions through consistently completable DPS checks would be very nice. So it's a bit like the reward system from the core at Warden, except it's maybe breaking the armor of a boss, where your scythe is now effective for that 10 seconds, tying all that in. Something more like that, where you have these more complex, more necessary DPS checks, more consistent damage, throw in scythe, telegraphed attacks. There you go. That's maybe. I know it's a lot. I can probably talk for hours on it, but
Do you throw any
Yeah.
on-screen effects in there, like Vardorvis has like the blood captcha, for example? Like, do you
Oh,
do
yeah,
anything like
yeah.
that?
Completely forgot, but I other games have some really funny stuff. I played a month of Lost Ark at one point when I got a bit fed up with how TOA was in the early days. I took the advice of many and myself and just I'll just go away for a month and do something else and played a different MMO. And Lost
That's pretty solid advice, honestly.
Ark has some fantastic stuff, which I still think, and I still think it has some incredibly good encounters. Um, but yeah, the on-screen capture thing, the on-screen
Debating if I want to do this task. I don't really like this adamant dragons, dude. Oh my god. Fuck this task.
blood clicky thing. So Lost Ark has a typing test, and it will actually tell you to do QRTCUIVB, and if you don't do that, you get punished. Maybe that's a bit funny and a bit much and a bit mean to people who are not great touch typers, but yeah, that kind of on-screen mechanic is really
The fuck you just? Oh my god, dude. I actually need to rewind this and hear this shit again.
blood clicky thing. So Lost Ark has a typing test, and it will actually tell you to do QRTCUIVB, and if you don't do that, you get punished. Maybe that's a bit funny and a bit much and a bit mean to people who are not great touch typers, but
Let,
yeah, that kind
let's
of
not do that.
on-screen mechanic is really fun. It's like I don't know, it's just like
People on mobile fucking what the fucking mobile fucking keyboard comes up and you gotta type in real quick. Jesus Christ.
Osu, right? I don't know many players who don't like it, like to see more of it. It has a place. I'm sure they're gonna do some stuff with it, and with any luck, it's not going to be limited to just necessarily clicking. I don't know what else you can do, like solve it. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Like I don't want to solve a puzzle or do a touch typing test actually, but there are other options, and yeah, that's probably for them to explore and for me to think about when they come. But yes, it's good.
I appreciate that they're at least trying to introduce like brand new fight mechanics.
What they need to do is what they're already kind of doing is you make a piece of content and then you're able to scale it up. You know, take a boss, start it off with easy to where it's like mole level, and then you scale it up, and then it adds in another mechanic. Then your drop chances for the unique item gets a little bit better. Get it a little bit more difficult. It adds more things, but you need to be able to have a chance at the unique at the easiest level, because otherwise, learning when you're learning something, you need to have a chance at the unique, because otherwise, learning it is not going to feel rewarding.
Like that.
Mm-hmm.
They introduced a lot of brand new things in TOA, and they're trying to because there's only so much you can do with prayer flicking and movement. Like you
Yeah,
can combine all of them, you can make the timing really tight, but at the end of the day, you kind of have to expand the bands of what your PVM mechanics are. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to create creative encounters.
it's ultimately all reflavored again. It's the same thing. You are still clicking, doing the same thing. It doesn't feel fundamentally different a lot of the time. I bring this back a little bit to the idea of a lot of other games have shield break or stagger and things where you are actively working to make the boss encounter a little bit easier for a period of time. We don't really have that kind of thing where the boss encounter
You can't Dragon Warhammer spec.
is you don't focus it for a period of time to generate an effect or to generate a window of opportunity. And
Oh,
these
I
are
see.
more things that I guess they play into what I've talked about with that designed boss. It's sort of these things can happen in the game, and they can work towards them. And I think they will have a place when they decide to go for it. A lot of the dev team plays Path of Exile, and I know they've taken a lot of inspiration and mechanics from there. But and that's not bad in any way. But I'd love to see more classical MMO mechanics make their way in and be imported in such a way that isn't just like RNG DPS check, but a bit more classic MMO based, because it's not going to lose the fundamental old school feel by doing that, and you can make it so that just for a period of time it's a part of the fight. much like P2 Warden, contains that formula that allows for average damage, and it doesn't take away from the feel of old school. It doesn't take away from the feel of the combat if it's just for one fight. More interestingly, no one seemed to complain about it. If anything, they liked the idea of it. So if people seem to like it, introduce a bit more. And each time you bring out a piece of content, just shuffle it ever so slightly in that direction. And until you get to a point where players are like, okay, now it's a bit too much, I think it's nice to keep doing that. No matter what the mechanic is, just give it a go.
Yeah, if anyone listening plays other MMOs or other games where you've experienced some really cool mechanics that you think, hey, maybe this would fit cool in old school. I don't personally play RS3 or really hardly any other games in general, so I would love to read some comments about
Dungeoneering would be fun, but Dungeoneering needs to give Slayer XP.
other mechanics that maybe Jagex could introduce. And if any J mods listen to this, maybe they'll give your
Because 20,
suggestions a look.
because I mean, on average, I make around 23k Slayer XP. It's fucking slow as shit.
But I want to shift over to Theater of Blood now because I think Tob maybe has even a worse problem than the Inferno in that people feel like it's too daunting to learn, but then there's also the added element of having to find people willing to teach you. And you're doing something really cool in that area. Could you kind of tell everyone about what you're doing?
Yeah. So
What you could do is have just like you could have a dungeon finder that just throws you in with people, and how you'd prevent. Well, what you would do is you would have gear slots that you would put your items in, so that whenever you go into it, you'll be using those items. And then people who, it'll be kind of like an advanced group finder. So let's say you want make sure that people all have dragon warhammers. Well, you would, in the groups finder settings, you would make sure that they have their gear slotted for dragon warhammer and stuff like that. And then you just get thrown in with people. That's how it should be.
this exact issue has been going on for since the release of TOB. It's hard to get into. Players don't want to take learners on their raid as a detriment to the raid. You're going to wipe. You're going to cost time and money essentially, and this is understandable. It's not really a form of gatekeeping so much because you can just run into Tob with a group of friends, but that itself poses another problem. You got to find players to do stuff with. Not everyone has friends who enjoy the game or has anyone they can really play with. So, where do you go? And it's a bit late coming, but I made a Discord purely just called Learn Tob. I have connections to a lot of people who like to teach raids, want to get others into Tob for the sake of nothing more than enjoying the content. And we now have a Discord that's about not even 2 weeks old and has 2,000 players in. And of these, about 300, I think, right now have learner role, which is simply to say, I am ready to start learning Top from 0 KC. All you have to do is go and join, and you need a set of Elite Void, decent stats, maybe maximum of 30 mil gear, and you'll find a mentor raid within the day. You can go learn. There's no blocking. There's no nothing. You require the gear. That's end game raids requires end game stats, and end game gets end game content requires end game stats and gear. That's how it is. But these aren't high. These max gear is 6 billion GP. Asking for 50 mil is not that crazy. So if you have that, put simply, we'll teach you. I'll teach.
That's a pretty fair take, I would say.
I do some raids every week. I'll teach a few. Whoever it is, doesn't matter who it is, and it's just a free resource. You can go there, 0 KC, get to 25 KC, and then there's a channel called Post 25 KC. This links to several big clans, several small clans, different communities you can go raid in. And the idea of the Discord is Tob is a really fun raid. People don't have entry points. Let's give them the entry point. No strings attached. And then say, like, look, you're 25 KC, can't really stay here anymore. You're welcome to, but like you can't really learn here anymore. Go elsewhere and try and populate more of these servers, more of these discords, more of these clans with toppers who want to do it.
That,
And I'm hoping that this
that's
will
pretty
also
cool.
pay forwards over time. It's a really, really good environment. The learners there who are 5 KC are better than some of the people in, not to name it, but well, okay, to name it, we do raids with like 100 KC. These guys are learning from really, really passionate people who are just putting free time in. And it's not to say that there are no other places to learn Tob, but I will pretty much say it's the best place to learn top right now. You're going to get taught quickly, taught well. You're not going to be on a waiting list for hours and hours or days. And ultimately, it gives you a place and some goals to go after you're done. So that's the whole thing.
I love that you're doing this, and I wish so badly when I was learning Tob that
Yeah.
this was a resource. To learn Tob myself, I literally looked at the front page of the high scores, and I went on Twitter and I started DMing people, and I said, "Hey man, will you teach me Tob?" And shout out to
It,
Stunlax, rank 1
Stunlax
Ultimate
is,
Ironman.
yeah.
He took me when I was a learner like 2 KC, and he taught me Tob. And they're really cool people in the community who are doing that, like yourself. So
Yeah.
I think that that is just so admirable. I do think it begs the question, though. Should players have to rely on acts of public service from experienced players in order to learn content, or is there something?
Yeah, that's interesting. In a way, it kind of does garner more like socialization. So I guess in one way it is kind of nice.
More that Jagex can do?
It is interesting because I mentioned earlier the top is not gate kept, and players are like,
Because the one thing with Group Finder is that the raids are pretty hard. So to explain everything over text is just it's a bad medium. Like the game would need like proximity chat or something.
but these guys don't want to take me on their raid. Yes, that's not gatekeeping if you're a learner, and it doesn't stop you from going into Tob and getting experience. Entry mode has been updated. You can go in and get experience. There are thousands, not thousands, but potentially hundreds of Tob guides. Exact has some fantastic YouTube guides. The content, the resources are there. Even the content, like Learner Tob, entry mode is there to help you. If you want to get good before you even join a team, you can do. You're not being gate kept from doing that. And the teams that are gatekeeping you are maybe the ones that are like 100 KC and asking for a fair rec to join. But you can go with other learners. And personally, my experience for learning TOB was on 416, the free for all world. I went there twice, not just on my main account, but also my alt account. So I'm extremely familiar with how 416 functions, and it's in particular how to get from 0 to, let's say, 10 KC to go raid elsewhere, how to do that on 416. And this more or less comes down to being proactive. This is what I always say. You have to be proactive and you have to expect to talk to people. You should not be entitled to be taken on raids by 100 KCs or even 10 KCs. You need to work for your KC. And I understand that this isn't for everyone. It's a tricky process, and sometimes you're on at the wrong time of day. There is genuinely no one around. So perhaps it is just a bit impossible, but it's possible at certain times, or if you put enough effort in. And I guess it comes down to, should you have to put that much effort in to go and find a raiding party in an MMO? No, not really. Um, TOA, I know we use it a lot, but it's just a good example for a lot of things. TOA is a fantastic example of a raid that's accessible. It's the fundamentally good thing about TOA, beyond some of the janky mechanics and whatnot. It got so many people into raiding. It is unfathomable. Um, I don't know if you go to if anyone's interested, go to the board at TOA and have a look at the total completions, and then go to the board at TAB and look at the total completions. Despite Tob being out 4 or 5 years and TOA 1 year, TOA has more completions, indicating that there are so many more players who are interested. And a lot of you watching are almost certainly players.
That's pretty interesting actually, especially when you consider Tob is. I mean, you have to do Tob for your quest cape, so that's quite significant.
Who started raiding through TOA. So it screams that players want to do this content. They actually really enjoy this. And it's hard to find the entry point. So the question is, what did Top do wrong? TOA did accessibility well by scaling it with invocations. Is scaling the key, or is there other things that they can do? One big thing is dying in Top. When you die, you're out. When your whole team dies, you wipe. In Chambers, for example, Raids 1, if you die, you just go back in. There is no fundamental wipe mechanic, which is quite nice for the learning process. That should be considered, and it's, well, I mean, TOA obviously gives you the option to, but that's part one of making the raid accessible, is not just kicking you out when you all die, letting you get more experience, go back in. Part two is making it scale. And I would argue that nowadays it's never going to be as good as TOA, but entry mode does its job really well. And it's had a few updates over the years, and as it stands, you can learn to do regular TOB through entry mode. You have a point of entry that is relevant enough um, that you can go there and learn more. So between maybe changing how the deaths would work, and bear in mind, I don't think TOB needs a change. This is more about for raids 4, raids 5 down the road. How to make the future raids accessible, learn from the mistakes of TOB. But yeah, making deaths matter less in that sense, or adding an invocation that allows you to do it in TOA's sense,
Yeah, having infinite lives
making
is
it
huge.
scalable or have some entry mode difficulty, preferably not just like an entry.
And it's like whenever you die, you get like free food and stuff, so you don't get like screwed over. To where you can kind of just like brute force through it is huge.
Mode, regular and expert mode, but like, easy, medium, hard, like the clue tiers, for example, a little bit more diversity, 5 different points of entry. Preferably with scalable rewards as well. So if you go into entry mode, you really don't get much except base loot. You go into normal mode, then you do actually get, like, I don't know, let's say you get a Vernix, or let's say you get Justy. You do a regular, you can get a Vernix. You do a hard, you get the weapons minus scythe. You do an expert, you get the scythe, for example. So scaling the reward based on those would be fantastic as well.
I think you should have a chance for a unique at every level, but obviously you should be able. Obviously, the harder it gets, the better the chance for the unique. Because, like, let's say the people that just will never get the time, that will never get the timing down. They're limited to doing the easy one. They should be able to still get a chance at all the uniques.
But I guess that's more or less the key here is like just learn from Tob, add these things in, and that will do for raids 4 quite happily.
Okay, I want to unpack that a little bit because you just brought up
Yeah.
like 5 really good points that I want to address. So I think you and I are aligned on a lot of our points here, but I do want to offer a little bit of not necessarily pushback, but an alternative perspective for like
Yeah.
TOB learning. So the first thing is that I have done plenty of 416 myself, free for all world for TOB. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. That is
No.
the worst experience I think I've ever had in RuneScape. And one of the reasons for that is that you end up queuing with people. Well, God, there's so many bad reasons. But first of all, a lot of these people are playing on very bad internet connections because they're actually
Mobile,
gold
probably.
farmers. So you're dealing with a lot of disconnections. You're dealing with people who are leaving mid raid as soon as they die and they realize that they're losing loot potential. So oftentimes you're not getting past like bloat room, for example. And you're just experiencing
That sounds
a high
awful.
degree of wipes due to, I wouldn't necessarily say inexperience, but it almost seems like apathy from the people who are participating in the raids with you. The other side of that coin is that there is the entry mode that Jagex has added to the game, and they've also updated entry mode since they originally released it. And I think that those changes that they've made have improved it. But I think that entry mode fails because even though it is teaching you the core mechanics of each room, it's not solving the problem of, I guess, players being able to prove that they are ready to step into a real raid with other people. And you're always going
Yeah.
to find other teams, even if they're low KC teams. We're talking like 10 to 15 KC. They could see someone who has 200 entry mode KC and say, hey man, we appreciate that you have 200 mode entry KC, but you need at least 5 to come raid with us. So it seems
Yeah.
like it's not providing that justification to get into the real raid. Thoughts on that?
Yes, I somewhat agree that like even if you have 10 entry mode, I think players are more inclined to take you, but it's never going to be as valuable. Like 10 entry mode is not as valuable as a one regular KC. Um, Purely from a damage perspective, entry mode does not deal anywhere near enough damage to get you really ready. And while you learn mechanics, you don't know like the fear of Berserk. And you have to know this if you want to learn how to stay away from it or be aware to like eat up. And I mean, you can go into a regular one, but then it's the team problem. And maybe even a mode where you can solo regular mode and not get loot. Anything like that where you could get true experience would go a long way. But I don't know. I feel like this problem falls back down to making it soloable. If you make something soloable, people can prove themselves in solos, and if teams are more efficient, that's great. And I don't think every raid has to be soloable at all. But I do think that offering the option for it is reasonable and offers entry points. And if players can put their own effort in to get KC and prove it themselves, then that's great. So this is probably more of a team issue overall.
RS3 and some other games also have taken a different approach to getting players into more challenging content by offering, I guess I would call it true practice modes. And the practice modes might be identical in difficulty to the real PVM encounter, but they'll give you unlimited retries in exchange for not offering any loot on completion, like you were just mentioning.
Yeah, that is the
How
same
would
thing.
you feel about a system that would work like that for TOB or for old school in general, where you
Sounds pretty
can
interesting.
go in and whether it's for Nightmare, Zulra, or TOB, you can go in unlimited retries, no punishment for dying, but no loot potential, just to get people familiar with the
And also, hopefully, no resource consumption.
encounter.
They have changed the system for the likes of Zora, where now it's got a grace period. This is also true for TOA. I don't know about top, but maybe. And there's a grace period where if you die, it doesn't cost anything up until your first 50 KC. So it's not quite the same because it's still not soloable content for TOB, whereas Zora kind of it is. You can go and you can just die repeatedly. And granted, you are using supply cost, but it's pretty minimal. At the highest level, it's maybe 500k a raid supply cost, and that is a lot. At the low levels, we're talking maybe 50k, and I think that's pretty reasonable overall. So Zora has it. Let's say Vorkath has it. I think Tob has it, but Tob still remains team locked as far as getting that experience for solos. You're not getting past Maiden as a learner in a solo, so it all comes back there still. Yeah.
I want to dive into the solo scaling because I think that's a really important topic for the community here and kind of a long setup to this question. So bear with me for a minute. But a contentious argument that I see for Theater of Blood is that it doesn't player scale in the same way that Chambers and TOA do. And a lot of people want to see a soloable TOB. Now, I always see HLC people chime into these discussions and say, well, it is soloable. I did it. I just needed 500 purple sweets and 2,000 hours of practice. And I think that's pretty clearly a bad faith argument because that's not a realistic, repeatable method, which is what people are asking for. The other common argument is that this is an MMORPG and we should have some forced group content, which as a standalone is fair, I think, but within the context of RuneScape, where pretty much every major PvE encounter has some sort of solo option.
It's a solo game.
I think that argument becomes a little bit
But
diluted.
I do like
so
more
given
group
the state of TOB right now, I'm
cooperation.
curious where you'd stand on giving a scalable solo option that's maybe a quarter as efficient as doing trios or 4-man and does give rewards.
I mean, TOA does a good job at this. You can do it solo, or you can make it a little more difficult. You can get more players, and you get better loot chances. So I think TOA's got it pretty locked in.
It is an interesting one. There is a pretty diverse and fairly large TOB community that only does existing solos, and of course they are high level. And this is one of those things where if you leave something for multiple years, in this case nearly 5 now, I think it's extremely hard to change something if you're going to more or less demolish a community overnight. It may only be, let's say, 3, 4, 500 players in that position, but it still feels really bad. And much like the TOA, like, if do we change TOA for the sake of fun? Do we change TOB for the sake of getting more players involved? I mean, arguably a better cause, but it still might be better time spent elsewhere. It's annoying because as a raid, as one of the major pillars of high-level content, maybe it is the argument that if you made it scalable to solos, even if it sucks to do solos, it might be a good idea. Now, the reason I think why they didn't make top solo in particular is because of the loot scaling. And loot scaling from into solos, if even if you could do like 1 hour solos at that level, would still be better than doing 5 man 20-minute raids because it's 1 in 9 no matter what you do. So I think they're partially locked in because of that. Partially again might be better to focus on the new content. Maybe a bit of both there.
Okay, so I realize this
Yeah.
is arbitrary, but so let me throw this out here for a second. Let's say Jagex
Sure.
offers scalable toggle. It
Yep.
takes 4 times as long as doing a 4 man, and
Yeah.
the purple drop rates are adjusted so that it is not more efficient than doing it in any level of groups. Let's say it's a third as efficient in terms of purples.
You could entirely cut. You can entirely cut purples out of it if it's the sake of like getting players into the raid still. But I mean, I don't know if I'd ever be against it really. There's no downsides other than time spent to create it. Um, I think this is one of those things that needs to be put to the wider community because I'm not informed enough really to understand how many players truly want to make it to top at this current time. I know for a fact there's more interest over time, purely because of this drive of players who started at TOA rating and now are funneling to chambers and now to top. There are definitely more players in that position, but me alone, I don't know if that's something that really a lot of people would benefit from and how many compared to new content ultimately. So it matters. It's worth talking about. This one is one of those that people need to really start piping up about. If you want something changed, discuss it, get it mentioned. Doesn't matter if you go on Reddit, on Twitter, if you're friends with a J-mod or find them in game. It doesn't matter where it is. Just let it be known. And especially the community managers these days. One of the biggest issues for Jagex community managers is probably pooling information from as many sources as possible and getting a really wide variety of opinions. And at the end of the day, they are going to focus on what the majority of the player base wants. That's completely fair. But if 20 people are saying this, it's not going to happen. If 3,000 people are saying this and they're collectively saying like, "Hey, I really want to get into top. Now's the time." Just start generating noise. That's
Majority of the player base, but I would say the majority of the player base is not on, fucking Reddit or these other places where people like, complain about shit where it's too easy and stuff. Like, come on.
more or less what it is. Doesn't matter if it's the right solution or not, but you got to discuss it. Otherwise, it's not going to get anywhere. So, I would say myself not well informed enough. More community discussion, more noise. That's the direction to go for this kind of thing. I like the idea. Is it worth the time? Got to prove it.
That is a very reasonable take. And I do want to say, I very much appreciate that you and Kirby, and those are the two examples I point to because I've spoken with yourself and had Kirby on the podcast as well. Both of
Mhm.
you are, probably top 10 PVM players on most people's lists, I would guess. But you guys are
Maybe.
not, humble answer. You guys are not stuck in your ways though. Like you are receptive and open to making improvements to content to make it either more accessible or more fun. And I think that that's not a sentiment that's necessarily shared amongst the entire HLC PVM community.
No, certainly not. I've been through phases playing the game where I have been extremely elitist, if not gatekeepy at times. I also like to think I'm aware of that now, and that players do go through that phase, and that's normal, especially as you get to a stage where you want to do high level content or you want to speedrun. You are going to be one of the best players in the game. You might be entitled, you might be arrogant, you might even be able to justify it. But looking out for the basically the majority of players is still important, because at the end of the day, like RuneScape is a game, games are fun, and players want to have fun and chill. It's not just about you. And if you want, and this is the big argument that more or less everything I say will revolve around. If we as high level players, what we enjoy is high level content and new raids and really difficult stuff coming into the game, that's fine. And a bit like how if you want
Yeah,
top
most
change, you
people
should make
don't
some
like
noise
that.
about it. If you want to generate that noise to push for new content, then you need more players in that position. So if I'm not doing a part in my position to get players invested and interested in TOB via a learning Discord, or TOA by making a TOA resources Discord, or Inferno speedrunning, and getting players, basically taking them from I'm a noob, I don't know what I'm doing, to hey, this is a raid that's kind of cool, to let's funnel them through the tricky part of the raid, get them invested in high level content, and make sure they enjoy it. Don't just do it for the sake of myself, but like because I actually think that the progression of that and that part of the game is both integral and really fun. Push people all the way through that and get them to high level to generate that noise. And it's beneficial for everyone by doing that. It's maybe it's a bit selfish in that sense, but people benefit from it in a real way. So, I think it matters, especially if you're in a position that I'm in, to be able to have some influence or set up a top Discord. You don't have to do it, but it sure as helps you in the long run. And as it stands now, players are getting into top. I've noticed that more and more people ask about it. It's a knock-on effect of the accessibility of TOA. If you backtrack to TOA at the start, I would have said it was too accessible. It's a bit silly. But I'm understanding more things like, the amount of players there does actually matter. Fang is extremely inexpensive for the quality and Lightbearer, and yet these items are doing wonders in terms of giving players an in to the content that they excel at. So it's not all bad. There are still some real tangible benefits from it. Um, but it all comes around, and sowing some seeds in places to reap the rewards later on, completely fair, and again beneficial for everyone. More people should really do it, if anything. I mean, I know I'm still going, but the top Discord in particular is a really cool example of a lot of those players in that position who are understanding that this content is actually just fun, and it doesn't take much to get people interested. It just takes one learner raid to get people hooked on the idea that, you know, as soon as you get to that point and you really enjoy top and you see it what it's for, and you have a nice fluid raid, maybe you get a purple, maybe you don't. That hooks people in, and that gets people invested in the harder raid and the harder side of things and the progression for both your account and yourself. It's a really nice cycle anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up the Discord and getting into TOB to sort of dip your feet into it because it's a fun activity in general. I mean, like I have friends who, one friend in particular, my friend Wings, is a maxed Ironman. He has thousands of hours of playtime. He has every piece of gear imaginable, and he has never touched TOB, no Vernic Defender, because I don't really know why. But for
Yeah,
anyone
because a
that's in
lot of
sort of like a
PVM sucks
similar
ass and you
position
got to
where
be
they've
tick
gone through
perfect.
most of the PVM content, TOB's just been too daunting. What's like your elevator pitch for getting someone to come try it out?
Before top Discord, it would have been harder. But now that there's an in, and you can just direct them there. You can. It doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter what your in is. The point is, TOB itself. It's difficult, and it's probably the most. In particular, it's the most punishing raid, is the way to put it. And people are going to just say, well, okay, why does ultimately why does difficulty matter? Why does punishing mechanics matter? Well, I'm playing the game for fun and to take it easy. Okay,
Exactly.
firstly, if you don't care about this stuff, that's fine, and I can pitch it to you. And if you don't care after that, that's fine. You don't have to do it. It's not about forcing players. It's about giving players. It's about making sure that players are firstly enjoying that process and then giving more to them. But why should you care? Boti, I think this might be an absolute massive incorrect quote, but I believe Boti once said, "If you play games, you may as well be fun at them. You may as well be good at them because being good tends to be fun." Very loosely paraphrasing, and I'm sure that's a fairly understandable sentiment. But the better you are at something, the more in-depth understanding you have, the more you can really try out new pieces of content as they come out. The more you can integrate yourself into that position, whether it be better gear, better ability, you're in a place to really try stuff on release, which is both incredibly fun and incredibly rewarding. And it's a part of progression. This is probably the more important one. I should have opened with this, but it's a part of progression. If we're talking about RuneScape, it is about meaningful progression. That's the bottom line. Everything from your skills to your GP stack to your own ability is about meaningful progression. Stuff that basically stays with you. It's like, getting good at RuneScape is a bit like riding a bike or flying a helicopter. 10 years passes, you hop on a bike, you're fine. And the innate skills behind the game, movement, pathing, prayer flicking, gear switching, these things are all very integral and learnable, and you don't forget them. I took a 1 month break, come back to the game, and then within a week, I'm like doing the same stuff I used to do. So you can invest in your progression, you can invest in your own skills through hard content, and you can see some really nice benefits for everything you do, whether it be faster boss KC, maybe you can hunt that pet a bit quicker, maybe you have access to clans, higher level teams, more content that's got more depth and more interest. And it's all plays into the progression of you and your account. Slight change here, but in terms of getting good, the best way to do it is to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And that's where Top comes into play as something that really matters. It is out of your comfort zone. That's why you haven't done it. If it was in your comfort zone, you probably would have done. Okay, again, if you had the in, but now you do. So now you have the in, and it's out of your comfort zone. Give it a go. That's the whole point. If you want to get good at something quickly, you have to not. You don't want to be like leaps and bounds out your comfort zone. You want to feel like you understand what's going on, kind of, but you make mistakes. That's the level at which players improve extremely rapidly, not just old school, but anywhere in life. You want to take yourself just out. I used to train esports teams, and one of the best places I ever saw this in action was a Halo team from the EU that played within the EU and was one of the best in the EU. And then you have NA teams, which for Halo at the time were much better. So you set up a scrim, or they fly out to NA, and you get this EU team at the top of their game in that region versus players who just swamped them. 1 week later, they're playing at the same standard because they were decent enough. They'd build up the skills, like you can build up Zora skills, you can build up your pathing from TOA, and you can take all these things, and you might just not be able to push yourself to the next level. And all it takes is a bit of something out of your comfort zone to do that. That's what Top is. That's what harder content does for you bit by bit. And it's rewarding, it's progression, and it should feel good. And anyway, if it doesn't, don't bother. Just play the game the way you want to play. It's not about forcing people. That's, but I'm pretty passionate about that, as you can tell, hopefully.
I can absolutely tell. Well said. I think that's a good reason to give it a shot if you're at all interested. So go do it, Wings. The second piece is the skilling discussion, and there's a lot of good stuff to jump into here. Now, before we did jump into it, you and I were hoping to get someone from the skilling community on to sort of do kind of a live debate. Unfortunately, the specific person that I reached out to didn't get back to me, but I do want to say just like open invitation if anyone does want to come on and discuss this from the skilling community side. I always think it's best to kind of like have people live to represent each side. Otherwise, it's a very awkward back and forth doing like video responses where you're not really getting the whole story. I think most people are looped into the big discussion around AFK skilling that's been going on. But before we dive in,
AFK skilling is great.
Recap for kind of how all this discussion started for anyone who's not aware.
Right. So, with the release of DT2, one of the bosses, Duke Circulus, had a skilling part to the fight. And one of this included hang on, I'm getting a random event. Let me kill Bob. Okay. One of the parts of the fight was a skilling portion that had like some Herblosh stuff and also a mining salt rock or whatever it is. And this mining salt rock thing gave you a stackable substance, meaning you could sit there and mine it indefinitely. Now, players were combining this mining very little XP for what it was worth with 6-hour logging via some particular methods, which I don't know if they still work now. I think they must have patched it out, maybe just for Duke. And basically what it was a 6-hour, 100% effortless AFK, don't touch it other than the setup method for 60,000 XP. So 10,000 XP an hour, 60,000 XP, extrapolate that however long you want. This was too much, and I think most people, even those who like did it, will agree that it's a bit too much and a bit too silly. But after that
10k
got
XP
patched
per
out,
hour is fucking nothing.
justifiably so, Jagex buffed star mining, which was an existing part of the game and consisted of stars falling in random locations across random game worlds and having that be changed from if you're solo and teams come on and do the star, it depletes faster, to it doesn't matter how many people are on it, it doesn't deplete faster. This change has been kind of crazy because there was a Discord, and this is interesting to look at. There's a Discord called Star Miners that focuses on where these stars drop, community-based effort to locate them. And Star Miners exploded from, I assume, maybe like 5 to 10,000 members. I don't know how many there were, to right now 94,000 members in the Discord, which is a ridiculous stat to think of itself. For
Yeah, because mining
context, we do
fucking
raids,
sucks.
the largest, I think the largest Discord except for Runelight, has just over 100,000, maybe like 110, 120,000 members. That's a raiding Discord. So clearly, this is like a massive deal in terms of the amount of players who both wanted to jump on it. And star mining gives something in the region of, I want to say, 20 to 30,000 XP an hour, and is also incredibly AFK. And so the point of all this discussion is that, look, people clearly love these methods for whatever reason.
True.
Whether it be a zero effort thing, whether it be they can play from work, whether it be they can watch their movie and not have to pay it. It doesn't matter, but people clearly enjoy it. And the other side of things is that players are saying that this is clearly broken. And
No,
there's a variety
it's
of
not
arguments
broken.
to say that this shouldn't really be allowed, and we can go into each of those arguments. And for what it's worth, I would like to both give arguments for and against them, because my position is not one that AFK skilling is necessary. I actually am more interested in the discussion for good arguments, sound arguments, reasonable takes on things. So if I say something stupid and someone points it out, I will accept it with grace and say that I messed up. But I also want other people to do that if I point out the issues with what they have. So that's where this whole thing is going.
All right,
And
here we go.
there are some very good and very bad takes on both sides. But I mean, we can dive into a couple of these things, right? So I'll leave it off. Yeah.
Yeah, so to kick us off, you made a tweet recently weighing in with your opinion, and you said, quote, "There's been so much discussion around skilling updates in forestry and mining over the last month, so let's add some more to it. Every skill should have a around 20k XP per hour idle method. I don't see how this would harm the competitive skillers or devalue 99s personally."
That's
End
a pretty
quote.
good take.
Responses from that tweet basically range from "preach, brother" to people having absolute meltdowns in the comment section. Could you
Yep.
help us to understand your reasoning and logic behind that tweet?
Yeah. The tweet, admittedly, is somewhat baity. I appreciate that some skills already have these methods. As I sit here, even in my response video to this, or my breakdown of this, I was fishing. I'm fishing right now, doing one of those exact methods. And um, understandably, skills have these methods. Understandably, some are stronger than others, weaker than others. And I appreciate that, or I can admit that, yes, it's a bait tweet to get the ball rolling and get the discussion purely to look at the arguments for and against, which is exactly what it did. Now, the annoying part of this, the really annoying part, is that I was hoping more players would come to an understanding that these methods are generally okay, but there is a balance issue at hand. A few of the responses, I'll use Thurko as an example, basically said as a response, look, I can appreciate people like this kind of thing, but I think what you quoted was unreasonable as far as XP for effort involved. And that's the core of the discussion, which I wanted to lead into. And I agreed with him, like, yeah, my example was not good. Maybe tailor it so you have to do 1 to 3 clicks per minute, and you get anywhere from 5 to 10% of the max efficient method in terms of XP per hour. And I gave a reasonable example, and we were like, sick, that's perfect. So
But let's
Thurko,
click every
reasonable, thumbs
5
up, A plus
minutes.
for discussion and coming to a reasonable conclusion. The other half of things, either people like flat out agreeing, which I think is actually probably not great, as well as people going, dude, this is devaluing 99s and here's why, or this is unfair for the concept of what the game was founded on. And any there's like probably 10 reasonable, not even necessarily reasonable, but 10 different takes on why it was bad. But yeah, that's the gist of things.
Yeah, and so you made a video kind of
Yeah.
explaining your train of thought, and I will link that video in this video's description. I do recommend checking it out because that was a good video. But some people in the community have pushed back even after kind of you explained your reasoning. I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm so sorry. It's like Hebox Jong. I know it's a Dutch name. I'm so sorry, Max. He made a
Max,
video
yeah.
responding to you. If it's okay with you, I'd like to go through not only some of his criticism, but also just some of the community criticism, and then allow you
Yeah.
to respond to each of those points.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So again, for the people listening, these are not my opinions. These are just pieces of criticism that I'm seeing, and I want to give Addie the chance to respond to. So, first up, you're just looking at this through the lens of a PVMer. You're not trying to get a non-PVMer perspective here. Is that a fair statement or unfair statement?
It's semi-fair. I am looking at it through the lens of a PVMer, but there is a reason for doing that, and I'll explain the justification, which is important. The game, originally when created, was mostly about skilling and basic skill progression. Understandably, 90 to 100% of the community cared mostly about skilling, because there was nothing else to care about. When PvP was introduced, or it may have been from the start, but not in a big way. So let's say as PvP gained traction, PvP quickly became the end game of OSRS, where your progression yielded results, whether that be through skills dealing more damage and having an edge over opponents, or your GP accumulated, allowing you to have better gear to perform better. And so PvP took off, and we have people who are still to this day fanatical about PvP, much more so than skilling, because it was both more engaging, had more depth, and was more interesting. If we were arguing at that point in time, I would have made my arguments based on PvP. But we're not. We're now at the PVM stage, where the majority of players who do interact with the game on a day-to-day basis, I don't know if they would call themselves PVMers necessarily, but maybe a fair amount would. Most of those players are actually now doing PVM as their main source of enjoyment in the game. So I'm trying to argue from a perspective that is understanding that and saying that the game is now much more about PVM. It's clear that it's better for progression. It's easier to build into. It's what the game developers have accepted, and therefore it's okay to do that because it is what the majority are interested in. So it is about tailoring the argument to the amount of players involved, primarily because this is something that is to do with fun. And when you're doing that, you have to look at the purpose of the game and the amount of people who are having that fun. So in this case, it's the PVMers. So yes, I am tailoring it to that. But I am also tailoring it to the skillers. I am also tailoring it to the PvPers. But proportionally so. Proportionality, whatever so. And for example, I can make an argument that I need I need agility levels to do wilderness shortcuts. Is that a PVM argument? Actually, well, maybe if you're doing PVM in the Rev caves, but it's still a PvP argument. I could say, what about maxing? Is it okay to like have players do unfun skills to max? I can tailor the argument however I like. It's not necessarily a PVM thing. It just happens that there are very good examples, and it affects the most people. I'm willing to look at it from other perspectives as well, though.
Okay. So, next point, you shouldn't be entitled to skilling rewards, which is what people who want idle methods are asking for.
Shouldn't be entitled to skilling rewards. What? So, as an example, Max Cape, just simply. Max Cape is a skilling reward. You have to skill to get it. And the idea is that if you are not putting effort in, you shouldn't be rewarded with the thing that is at the end of that grind. Sure, I appreciate that this is probably closer to the true side of the argument and gets very close to the balancing issue immediately. I agree. You shouldn't, if you're putting in zero effort, you probably shouldn't be entitled to things. And there's the question of like, how prestigious is something, because that will depend that will determine how entitlement really works. If no one gives a crap about it, it doesn't matter whether you're entitled to it. You just give it to people. No one cares. So it's about how much people care and how prestigious something is seen to be. Backscape is not as prestigious as it used to be, but it's still a fair example for that. And the way to look at it is, a lot of these methods, especially Duke, were zero effort, but I'm not in defense of them. And a lot of these methods, like star mining, are very close to zero effort, and I'm still not in defense of them. And to define my position very clearly, I want, again, 1 to 3 clicks per minute for 5 to 10% of the max efficient XP per hour for most, if not every skill. The one to focus on for this discussion should be agility. There's no way to really do that feeling like you're maximizing your XP through an AFK method for agility. And so we can use that for like all the discussion here. It's just agility and a method that that gives you 5,000 to 10,000 XP per hour for agility, practically not like entirely AFK, but still doing something enough to interact with the game. And I'd argue that that's not zero effort. And that's the point, is that as long as you're putting in some effort, if we can agree on what the effort is, then the entitlement part just kind of fades away. It's okay because you are deserving of it by putting effort in over a really long period of time. So it's effort times time, basically, right? That's what it comes down to. And if you're not putting in any effort, zero effort, then your entitlement level, you're not entitled to this.
By the way, as I'm going through these response points, do you want me to send you a list so that you have like something to read?
I'm writing them down. I've got my own like set of notes up. But if I lose track, then we can start doing that. But
okay, no worries.
It's okay.
Okay, so RuneScape is a grind game. It's okay to force players into skilling even if they don't want to, because that's just how the game works.
I'd argue that AFK methods are still skilling. Put very simply, if we can agree that there is some level of effort involved, no matter how long the grind is, you're just doing it for longer. You are grinding over a longer period of time. And again, it falls back on this premise of effort. So in general, that is a statement I kind of agree with. And to get to the heart of the issue is, let's change the topic to what that effort required is. And this is why a lot of these arguments are just unnecessary. That's one of those. I don't think it's even worth saying, because that's not the core of the issue. The core of the issue is the balance.
Well, I mean, parts of the game are just idle. So, I mean, people do like idle games. Look at all those like mobile idle games. And the neat thing with OSRS is you can do idle stuff, or you can do really sweaty PVM stuff. But it's nice to have a variety of things that you can do.
So I'd say that's, I'm going to do this for a lot of them because they're not really getting to the core. That's one of them, though.
If you don't like to skill, don't do it. Other than quests or PVM locked behind quests, you're never really forced to skill. So why can't players who don't enjoy skilling just go do something else instead of catering skilling methods to those people?
That's a pretty stupid comment. I mean, you have to. I mean, you have to skill pretty far for achievements and stuff like that, like achievement diaries and stuff. Like the benefits of skilling and to unlock those quests, so closely tied to account progression that it's not optional. It is mandatory, realistically.
This argument of not forced to is very silly, and I think you can rephrase this to make fun of it in a way. You're not forced to complain about updates that players want, so don't do it. It's a very silly argument that falls apart immediately if you want to rephrase it like that. And I appreciate people will have their own opinions and their own reasons for doing this, but we should really get to those good reasons than silly statements like that.
True.
I'm
true.
not sure
True.
that
True.
even needs more attention, to be honest.
Yeah. 100% true.
And on the topic of forced, if you add something to the game that a majority of players are going to want to get, i.e. a max cape down the road, you are forcing them. And some people are just going to hammer back at this and be like, that's just not true. You don't have to. You don't have to. But I'm just going to put it out there. It's forcing.
Yeah.
You're telling players this content exists, and then they are going to want to go for it. Doesn't matter if they have this choice, they're still going to want to. They're trying to play the game. And that's the core of it. Players are trying to play the game. Players do enjoy parts of it. They just don't enjoy other parts of it. If changing the other parts doesn't affect the players who really care about it, what's the problem? But yeah, that one's a silly one. I think most people understand that's a bit silly.
Yeah.
Skills have a ton of variety in their design, their rewards, and their XP rates. So with that in mind, why can't we have some skills that are easier to train and others that are more difficult or slower to train?
Skills have a ton of variety. Why can't we? I mean, we do. What the fuck?
Yeah, this one I understand if we were talking about the XP rates, but we're not. Sorry, not like well, we are talking about XP, but not like about the high bounds of XP rates. That is to say that some skills will always be faster and some skills will always be slower. I agree. I don't have a problem with that. And the way to look at this is that again, if certain skills aren't fun to train via the existing methods, you have three possibilities. Number one, make the XP rates much faster to alleviate the suffering and let people say like, this amount of XP that I'm getting is good enough. Great. There's
Yeah,
actually four options. I'll get to the last one in a second. Option two is to make it AFK. Well, I'll put it option three. Option two is to make the method fun. Make it really engaging. Sepulchre is the best
that's the best option.
example of this, and
Sepulcher, it's alright content.
Sepulchre is more or less something that
Rooftops is way fucking better, but anyway.
not everyone, but a vast majority of players who get into it really enjoy Sepulchre. It's a great example of a skilling method that is fun and still rewards only about 110k XP an hour at max F. It's not much, but it's fun. I did a ton of Sepulchre post 99 purely because it was fun.
Okay, let's fucking calm down
Option
there,
three is
Turbo.
make it AFK. It's a simple, easy option. There are things in game that already do that for a lot of skills. Star mining existed; it got a slight buff, so instead of them redesigning a whole reward, a whole new reward for a new piece of content or skilling, they just make a tweak and it's done. So it's easy.
Well, on my fucking camera, I have to like zoom in on my face. It's so annoying that my camera does that. Oh my god. Alright, anyway.
And it's convenient and it pleases people, granted. And yes, it is the easy option. Yes, the better option is to make more things like Sepulchre. But between dev time and ideas maybe not quite working out, AFK tends to win a bit over that. We'll touch on the idea of why can't they make good content a bit later or maybe after this point, but option four is to make it worth something. Add an incentive. Because the incentive of getting a skill to a certain level doesn't feel great. Or the unlock at hand maybe isn't that fantastic.
Agility Cape needs to give infinite run energy. No, not even bullshitting.
Or it feels too far away. But if you add 50 mil an hour to the skill, I will go train mining right now. It doesn't matter how boring it is.
50 mil an hour, I mean, how do you do that? Like, that's. Because if a skilling method's really easy and it gives a lot of money, people are gonna. Bots are gonna just do the content. I mean, I guess you shouldn't assume that bots are gonna do it, but players in general are gonna do the content, and then the money, supply and demand. Honestly, like that's pretty. Yeah.
Um, so you have four options, and unfortunately, option four is never going to work out at GP
Oh, okay. So yeah, he basically just admitted that that's not gonna work.
because most skills are going to be botted to hell and back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would love it to be a genuine option and to just delete all bots immediately to reward players for actually skilling again, but it's not realistic.
That'd be amazing.
Much in the same way that option one isn't realistic because you can't just increase XP and hour rates. Even I'm not advocating for that. I do think skills should have variety. I do think there should be different times to get to max for each skill.
Yeah. The X. Yeah. It's tricky.
And I respect that old school, as a grind game, as it has always been, will have those limitations on the amount of time it will take you to get to max in the first place. That's
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't want the game to be like RS3 where you can just get double XP and do all this other shit and basically get max pretty quickly.
okay. So the two remaining options: make it fun, make it AFK.
Solid options. Make it fun or make it AFK. That's That's fucking solid. Okay.
You don't have to do any of these options, but then players are suffering. So the point is, let's alleviate that. I guess we can loop back around at this point to the idea of how do you make content fun? So Sepulchre was the option, Sepulchre was the example. And I think it gets really tricky here because let's take an example of fletching. Let's make no, let's do what's a good
Fletch.
example? I mean, some of the skills of mini games at this point in time, but I want to choose one that doesn't have one. Smithing. Let's take smithing. How do you make smithing fun and interesting? And I can come up with examples
I mean, Giant's Foundry is definitely a positive for the smithing. So
that I think actually are fun and interesting. But I think they take away dramatically from what the skill is at its core. You are no longer training smithing in the way that smithing is meant to be. That is on the anvil, or I guess in the furnace. The primary like methods of training, they will no longer apply because you'll just forego them in favor of this new minigame. Now,
mm.
if players are okay with that, fantastic, let's go that route. And I know Giants Foundry, I actually forgot about Giants Foundry because it's a bit shit and people don't like it. But
What?
you can
What? What do you mean? I don't know. It's kind of messed up. That's a bad take.
have a mini game where like maybe you're building a guardian or something like a metal guardian. I don't know
Or maybe you're building a sword.
what the circumstances are, but like you would go around smithing parts of it and attaching it. You would
Yeah, you go around fucking sharpening pieces of it or whatever the fuck, all those grindstones and shit.
involve a lot of movement mechanics. You
Yeah, it requires a lot of movement. A Giant's Foundry requires a lot of movement.
would involve a lot of these inventory management mechanics, maybe some switching stuff. I don't know, just
Oh my god, what do you want to be tick fucking perfect on gear and prayers swapping for fucking training smithing? Come on.
like almost classic PVM esque skills.
Jesus Christ, adding PVM to smithing? Come on.
Touching again on the earlier point that Sepulchre makes use of movement. Movement is fun,
Sepulchre kind of sucks.
and it feels like you're getting somewhere.
You basically have to have true tile. You really can't do it on mobile.
Feels interactive when you dodge obstacles. Uh, Tie that into smithing in the same way, and you have maybe an interactive way of training smithing.
Giant's Foundry.
But the problem with this, if you do this, all skills are going to be this movement based, inventory switching based thing. It becomes all the same.
Becomes annoying.
And I grant that we play like a clicking simulator, but the more you stray away from these, um, like the more you stray away from these core training methods,
People like OSRS because it's simple. Or at least it should be. Simple, low effort, and chill.
the less it's going to feel like the skill you're actually training. I think there are some good compromises. For example, in Guardians of the Rift, you still feel like you are sort of crafting runes. You are interacting with the rune crafting altars in a way that feels good. And Guardians is generally seen quite well. Wintertot, you are still cutting logs and you are still burning them. It's just slightly different from making lines of fires. So there is some level to incorporate the base skills into minigames. Maybe that's a great way forwards.
Do we want to have everything as a mini game? Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. So far, of the mini games that I've seen, I've enjoyed. I think it'd be kind of messed up if they had like a mini game for Herblore, which I think I've heard some like conspiracy. Thanks for that. Like training Herblore from a fucking mini game, I think that'd be kind of weird. Because it would kind of devalue doing like herb runs and stuff. Which, if you take herb runs basically out of the game, well, I mean, you would still need the potions, but to train Herblore, a big portion of it is herb runs. Take that out, then it's like kind of what's the point of farming at that point?
But how doable is this for all the other skills? Is it really worth making all these skills fun? And more importantly, what is actually fundamentally wrong with having AFK methods? despite all of that and the fact that you can do that and maybe it will come into the game over time, what actually is bad about AFK methods? Maybe that's the more important thing here.
There's
You
nothing
can
really
have
bad
the
with
AFK methods
AFK.
now, and in a few years they can develop the fun methods. If that's what the player base decides is the direction to go,
As long as the AFK methods are not like exactly the same XP as some like engaged method.
let's take immediate steps to alleviate the boring parts and then work on them over time. And now we get into the problem of why do people have such a distaste for these methods? Still, if that's like the route we can agree on that maybe makes more sense, why would you not allow it to come into the game right now? But that was a hella long ramble.
No, I think there's even maybe one thing to extend on from what
Mhm.
you just said, which is that I think there's some fair criticism that although some of the skilling mini games that have released recently have been very well received, they're fun, they're engaging methods of training the skills. They don't always feel like you're training the skills in the way that the skill was designed to be trained.
Yeah.
And for anyone on the skilling side who's in that position, I would make the argument that at least in the case of having an AFK or idle option, you are still preserving the core integrity, the core way that that skill was meant to be trained. So yes, it's there, but at least it's different from having a mini game where the experience might be dramatically different from where it was originally intended to be.
I would imagine there are more skillers actually in favor of not mini gamescape. But I'm not going to speak for them. I mean, if that's the case, I think that is. But
Yeah, I'll speak for all of them right now. We agree with you.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, most of the mini games are pretty good. I did a little bit of that forestry shit. I wasn't about forestry.
The next point, the player base is getting older and has
Just extra bullshit that takes up bank slots.
less time to play due to other life responsibilities.
Oh, of course, they can be put in the forestry kit, so yeah, that's true.
But people in that position need to just adjust their goals instead of making game changes to accommodate them.
Yes, and I think people do. Otherwise, you would not be able to get on with your life, for starters. So,
All right, hold on, I missed that. I have to rewind that a bit.
Play due to other life responsibilities.
Okay, the player base is getting older and has less time to play due to their life responsibilities. True. I mean, you don't want to make a game like, I don't know, if you make a game like Diablo 4 where it's like the assumption is, you have basically no time to play it. You can beat the game playing play for a week, 3 hours a day or something, and you fucking beat the game. Like, I don't know. But anyway, let's see what they have to say.
But people in that position need to just adjust their goals instead of making game changes to accommodate them.
True.
Yes, and I think people do. Otherwise, you would not be able to get on with your life, for starters.
Well, you wouldn't be able to
So-
play the game, honestly. If it's, yeah.
That's a given. That's what people do. But it doesn't change the fact, and all of the arguments fail to address the core principle of the skill isn't fun to train. And it will always come back to that. If it's not fun to train, it's about making it more fun. I'm not making the argument. So, yeah, this is the one. I'm actually not making the argument that people are getting older and have less time to play. I've never even said that myself. So it's a straw man. You're making up something that you think suits what I'm trying to say, but just address the one topic of it's not fun to train. And if they do that, then I'd
Yeah.
be able to, have some real discussion with it. And again, go back to the idea of it's about balance rather than some random straw man like that. And a lot of these are straw mans, and it doesn't matter. We can still address them. That one is a bit of a silly one. People do adjust their time to play.
Yeah, people and their
You have
fucking
to.
straw mans, honestly.
You won't be able to function as an adult. That's just the case.
So annoying.
So, I don't know. That one's a silly straw man, I think.
That
Yeah.
question and your response leads perfectly into the next one, which is that
Yeah.
Addy, Not every part of the game needs to be fun. Get tough, push through the
Oh,
unfun.
Oh, Mm, every portion along the way should be fun.
Stuff, and then you can enjoy the fun things later.
That's such a stupid take, or such a stupid comment.
this one grinds my gears. Um,
Yeah.
there are a variety of responses about how things aren't necessarily fun, and the idea of relief is a stronger emotion than one of enjoyment towards a goal that is like less. You're not getting relief from something if you enjoy working towards it. And so you should make players feel relief because it's a stronger emotion and it drives them, and it's more like dopamine when it hits. That's kind of true, but I still don't believe in this whole idea of let's make people suffer for the greater
Well, yeah, because all that's gonna do, if you make people suffer, they're just gonna say "fuck this" and quit playing the game. I mean,
the greater part of it. There are some that were saying that that is in fact what old school is for me. It's not even about thinking that's what like is good in general. Like that's what they like to do. And I had some people say like, I go to the gym to suffer. I go there because I hate it. Seriously, that's what some people were saying. And it's like, I'm just like, really? Most people I know, most go there because they enjoy the progression of like the IRL progression of getting a bit stronger, getting a bit
right,
fitter, getting healthier, and seeing
right.
results over time. They might not like the immediate like, oh, this is so heavy, but outside like that's a given of training like that. In the same way that putting time into a skill, you're seeing your time go by, like, yeah, it's not feel great necessarily, but it's not meant to be actually shit to train. And we can still work on engaging methods that force you to grind in the same way that sepulcher is a grind of time. You're staking your time against your XP. So I don't know.
Damn, this cactus giving me a lot of
I don't think we should
spines.
have people
Holy
suffer
shit.
really. And I can appreciate that if you want people to suffer, maybe tell them to go do chambers and go 2,000 dry on a T-bar. That's the same thing, I guess. I mean,
Yeah, that would be
maybe if you
suffering.
want people to suffer that much, let's give them the means to get to raids. Then they can suffer more. Maybe that's a good way to put it. I don't know. It seems a bit silly to me, though.
Yeah, the
I
follow. Sorry, please
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, no, every part of the game should be fun.
I appreciate the dopamine hit is legitimately higher, but that's not a good reason for making people go through that stuff. Yeah.
Yes, this follow up is my question here. From a game
Hmm.
design standpoint, do you think it's smart for game developers to lock fun content behind unfun grinds that might take 10, 20, or 50 hours?
Uh, I would always go. I'm not really sure. I mean, I think in some cases it's okay. You don't have to make the entire game at all points in time extremely fun, but you have to make it tolerable. You have to, so that, for example, I don't particularly enjoy TOA, but I appreciate there's a goal at the end that I want to work towards. And here's the thing: I refuse to do solo raids, duo raids, and trio raids scale wise in TOA. I think they're horrible. But I have the option to do teams. And so I'm doing teams because at that point I can tolerate it. And I think a lot of this is about at what point are you willing to tolerate it? Because some people are like 80 mining for like 73, 74 mining forever. They clearly can't tolerate the method. And if you can't tolerate it to the extent that you will never do it, we have to give them an option that will allow them to tolerate it. In the same way
Yeah,
that PVM,
true.
you can just go slower if you want to. And it's like you can tolerate.
Prime example is whenever I do Cerberus, I actually just do the slow, like, flinching method, just because learning the fight itself it's not worth it, in my opinion. And I'm very glad that a flinching method exists.
It because you can just do it slower. You don't have to do these extreme methods, or you don't have to do the one thing that's horrible for you. There are options in there. That's different. I know this will come up, but like PVM is just that's how it's built. You can just go slower. You can just hide behind a pillar. You can, you have a video on AFK fight caves, for example. You just AFK fight caves, and that's a whole lot different argument. We'll get onto it, but yeah, I hope that gets brought up anyway. Though.
Another comment, I don't care if more enjoyable skilling methods would help appeal to potential new players. If you don't like grinding, you're not cut out to play old school RuneScape.
Oh my god. It's basically the same
Oh,
question.
that is a gatekeep, in my opinion. Yes, the game is grindy. Um, yes, I think it should remain grindy.
Yeah, it
That's
should
part of the
remain.
core of the game. If you want to work towards something, then the long grind towards it matters. But this ties into the above thing about it has to be tolerable. It has to be tolerable enough to want to train in the first place. Otherwise, it's not going to be a grind because you're never going to interact with it. You have to get people interested in interacting with it. And maybe that's a different discussion for how do you get people invested in wanting to train? Maybe you come up with different variations of existing skilling methods. Sebe did a recent one on granite mining using Celastral Spark, showcasing to players that hey, there is a semi-AFK option to get really good XP rates. That's a push in a good direction to get players invested. That's something the skilling community maybe needs more of. But if you can't do that, or if the skilling methods don't allow for that, you still have to create the new ones that do make it just tolerable enough that players want to train it in the first place.
RuneScape was built on skilling. By adding more AFK or idle methods, you're changing what made RuneScape RuneScape.
RuneScape was built on progression. Skills were the means to do that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we have different means through PvP and, more importantly, PvM. This goes back to the very first thing I think I said at the start of this conversation about how PvP and PvM overtook skilling as the core means to make progression to your account, as well as yourself as a player. This doesn't deny the fact that skilling has a lot of it. It just says that PvM is a bigger part of the game fundamentally. And I will always defend that the beauty of the game is actually meaningful progression, seeing numbers go up, seeing that progress be permanent. That's something myself and all the skillers agree on. It's like, because your progress inherently stays forever, it matters so much more to you. That's
True.
true for PvM as well. That's
True.
true for KC. That's true for boss pets. That's true for collection log. So there's so many parts of the game that, yes, it's all tied into.
How that can get fucked up is if they add new items to the game that makes getting trivial items or makes getting previous items trivial.
Skilling, perhaps unfortunately, but that doesn't mean skilling is the core of the game. It means meaningful, like permanent progression is the core of the game. That's what makes it fun. That's what drives players. That's why players set goals to go and obtain them so they can have it forever as a trophy. Um, you know, not necessarily like, but like as an example, that's what drives players. That's what drives the game. So skilling is a core part of the game. It's not what it's built on.
By offering AFK methods, players are always just going to opt for those, and that takes away the decision making element between different training methods that exist today.
Not always. I mean, look at how many people do that shit content called Sepulcher because it gives more XP, you know? But it's like the easier thing to do is just do rooftops, which is way more chill.
More players will be likely to interact with it, yes. But in the example of where like players will never interact with like granite, for example, because it seems so wild and so horrible, you can either have skillers maybe make videos about it. Again, Sebe's video that's doing hopefully some good stuff to get people invested in it works for some people. But if players are never going to train it, it's it's the same argument from before. Um, I grant that this is again getting a bit closer to the true argument about balance, where yes, if you have a completely idle method for like 10 hours, it's a no-brainer that you would do it because the effort is zero. It's zero IRL effort. But the second you define it as 1 to 3 clicks per minute for 5 to 10 of max XP, now you have a point where there is a decision to be made based on whether you want like 10x faster XP, and your time you're
Yeah.
going to spend matters. So I don't think it removes the decision. If anything, it enables the decision between them. Some of those methods that will enable you to get to higher levels will unlock even better methods that are more suitable and faster XP. So if you, for example, introduce AFK mining, and Stars is very good at this, bear in mind, I don't like Stars as they are, but if Stars,
Well, stars kind of sucks because a lot of times when you go to the Discord and by the time you like sit there and find a star and then you run to it, it like depletes pretty much right away. So you're better off still scouting your own.
have a level, is it level 2 or 1 rock? It's reverse, right? At level 90, you need 90 mining. At level 1, you need 10 mining, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a method that gets players to be able to skill from level 10 mining. And that is crazy because there's not many other skills that will do that in that same way. So this is probably a thing we'll touch on other bits, but giving players access to skill, and I think the bracket for this is about level 20 to 30 until level 60 to 70, which is where you unlock those really fun, really interesting higher XP an hour methods. If you had one for agility, it might be the case that rooftops feel dull as hell until you get to Priftindus or until you get to Poliv Niche and you're feeling like, the XP an hour actually feels pretty good. And you can get into a rhythm there, you're invested in trying it out. So some of this is about getting you to a place where you can actually try those methods.
Yeah, so I want to explore that a little bit more actually. In terms of like for adding these idle or AFK methods, should the let's say 20% rate of the top rate be automatically available and just unlocked at like a flat level? Like, let's say level 40 mining, you have unlocked a 20% idle method that's getting you 20% of the best possible XP an hour that you can get from mining. Or should it always be a case of whatever level you're at, the idle method is yielding 20% of the XP that you could get from the best method you could access at the time?
Oh my god, we're getting way too technical on this question. Like, what the fuck?
And I think I did a very
Hmm.
poor job of phrasing that, but I hope I got the point
mm.
across.
So, should you wait? So you're saying that should there be a level unlock at which you unlock the method, the idle method itself, compared to just at any point in time you can just sit there and AFK and get XP relevant to the level you're at
I
from the best method at the time, something like that?
Yeah, let me try to I think you
Sure,
got it,
yeah.
but let me try to rephrase it for everyone listening.
Yeah.
So, let's say at level you're level 40
This fucking
mining.
camera.
There's two ways that this could go. You could
Mm-hmm.
unlock a AFK method that gets you 10k mining XP per hour, and that
Oh
method
my
is going to stay the same XP rate whether you're at that level 40 or you're at level 99. Or should that be scaled to the
Oh,
point where
okay.
if at level 40 you could only get 50k XP an hour at the top rate, then that idle method would then become 5k XP an hour, and it would scale upwards as you
Right.
progress.
I would say that most methods revolve around. I guess it depends on which one. Mining and woodcutting, obviously, dragon weaponry up till tier 60, you have that natural progression anyway. Arguably, some other stuff for other skills might not be quite the case. Um, I guess you have to take the assumption that we agree on what is a suitable amount of XP an hour at each point, and then between the two options, what's better. So, assuming everyone agrees that you can have, it doesn't matter. But assume we agree on the XP rates that you.
Every skill should have a method where you can get 100 XP per hour. That's every skill should have 100 XP per hour method.
Get at these different points in time. I think the best option is to unlock it at a certain level as a reward. More rewards for things feels good anyway. It's incentive to train the skill at the start, and it gets you invested in what the original method is meant to be in the first place.
Except for maybe Slayer. I don't know if you do Slayer correctly. You would be maxing your combat around the same time as getting 99 Slayer. Or so I've heard. I don't really know. I just did NMZ to max my combat. So
Yes. A lot of the time, you're going to train and eventually unlock a minigame and then do the minigame forever. And maybe there is more charm in doing some of the original skilling in the first place. So the question is the bigger question, the really big one is what level should it be unlocked? And maybe that's relevant. Maybe that's dependent on the actual skill we're talking about to begin with. I would say a reasonable position is anywhere from level 20 to 30. And if you think about this in terms of combat, might be the best way to phrase it or look at it, is that very obviously the game has very rapid progression, exponentially difficult, leading all the way through to 99. Some milestone levels would be like 92, halfway to 99, and level 80 is 2 million XP, so about 1/6 of max. So level 80 is like the border for maybe when you start to get the very good methods. But when we're talking about very, very low XP, even at very, base XP methods, you're still getting there quite fast. Wintertop, for example, unlocks at level 50. That's, I think, a bit too high. And I've seen a fair few players get a bit bored of the woodcutting process leading up to that, as well as the fire making. Maybe the double combination is too much. I don't know the exact quote on level 50 XP. It's like 100k, maybe something like that. You can find it. Um, but I think even 50 is a bit much. So I would like to see it at realistically level 30, I would say. Level 30. At the point where in combat you're unlocking adamant armor, where rune feels really good and it's the big upgrade, but getting to 40 is tricky, and then getting to like 60 for dragon is like a lot, but rewarding.
Yeah, you
Bit
know,
of a rambly thing, but yeah, I think 30 is the answer.
I it's funny you said 30 to 40 and my knee jerk was like, "Oh man, that seems way too low to me."
Yeah, it
But
does.
then you put it in terms of 50 fire making for Wintertod, and I mean, I have done that grind on 10 different accounts, and
Yeah,
I can tell you it does feel like a very unengaging, tedious and unfun grind that you're doing. I don't know
right.
how long it takes. I mean,
E-
it's a couple hours, but that's for a fast
It's not
skill,
that bad.
and
I
Yes,
mean,
it
come
is
on.
very boring. You're right.
Of
and
course, I mean, I've only done it once. I mean, what kind of fucking psycho has like 4 different accounts?
this is even for a seasoned player. This is not a new player. You are accustomed to the grind. You understand what it's about, and you're willing to go through with it, but it still feels crap. Um, Again, I know this will come up, but quest rewards, quest rewards, quest rewards. We can just quest to 60, so what? And we'll probably touch on it, but yeah, we can do it now if you got the thing for it. But yeah,
Let's dive into it right now while we're still
yeah,
thinking about it. Okay, so this is probably about as close as I have on my list here, but skill gating quests and by extension, skill gating PVM content locked behind those quests is okay because you rarely have to train beyond level 70 anyway.
yeah. Some level 70 is not quite a million XP. It's like 800,000 or something like that. That's a lot of XP. Yes, RuneScape's a grind game. Unfortunately, players get very bored before they ever get there. And
And they quit.
I would urge a lot of people who are considering that I'm a long-term player and I have no problem ever getting to level 70 on skills, and I've done it a few times. Try and find a new player on Twitch, and seriously, just don't have to say anything. Just watch them for a week and see what progress they make. Just 1 week. You will be
And they quit. I have. I've seen a new player. They made it to like Temporos, and then they did like a week of Temporos, and then they just fucking quit.
hopefully a bit shocked at how little progress people make. And yes, questing does a huge amount of that progress for them, but players often don't feel inclined to do quests. And you know what's weird about this is that skillers want players to train skills, but they're willing to say that questing is a reasonable way to skip skills. It's a bit odd to me that you wouldn't want them to actually train the skill and engage with it, unless you're going to accept that maybe the skilling method is indeed crap. But regardless of that side point, questing itself, I don't think players should be forced to quest to make gains in skills. Not questing and particularly like dive bombing all quests isn't necessarily a fun route for players either. So it's about giving them the option to train on the side, still understanding that the skill methods for that level are pretty boring, perhaps.
I think having quests unlock new skilling methods is a good reward that quests can give.
Aka running rooftops. And it doesn't matter if you can get level 70 through questing. Why are we forcing players to do quests now? The point is to not force players to do things if they don't want to do them. It's to give them open options. And it's to make sure that the options are balanced enough that if they really just don't like questing, they can still make gains in agility. I grant that
Yeah.
even I tell everyone do quests, work on Questscape. But if they come back at me and they're like, I'm a bit bored right now. I don't really want to. I want to do something else. Then that's fine. Why are we telling players we have to go do quests? Um, but anyway, it just seems a backwards argument fundamentally to tell people to train a skill by not training a skill. But you know,
Yeah, the questing for skills is one thing. I think I agree with you partially on that point. I think
mm-hmm.
that one thing that would make me agree more with you about whether or not it's a good thing to lock quests and some content behind skilling has to do with the profitability or incentive of skilling. And
Oh
way
yeah.
back in the day in original RS2, skilling was actually a very good moneymaker. You could
Yeah.
profit a lot. And some skills, like double natures, for example, for some time were the best money in the game. But with
Cutting
the
gems.
cutting
My favorite
gems,
example.
there's a million examples. All pretty much every single skilling had multiple methods that would make varying but good amounts of money. And unfortunately, we're in a position right now where bots have really overrun skilling, and skilling is largely unprofitable. There's a few exceptions, but on the mass, skilling is not making people money. And in a lot of cases, if you're trying to max, you're probably dumping a lot more GP into skilling just to get those levels, and not actually reaping any GP reward benefit out of it. So, with that aspect in mind, I actually like that there are some milestones that incentivize players to train skills so that once you've hit 70 agility, you know, oh, I have unlocked a requirement for Song of the Elves. I can do that now. I feel like it gives people at least some sort of incentive to train the skill, whereas the core driver, being money making, that used to be present, is no longer a part of skilling.
Yeah, I grant that's absolutely true. I don't know if it's especially for the new players. I feel like it's very hard for them to understand what they're really going to be getting out of it. Maybe that's more so along the line of, if this is about getting those players to a point where they can experience that, we know what it's like. And we can tell them it's worthwhile, but does that really mean to them that it is? I don't know. Maybe that's a bit of a weak argument,
How do we
but
make
I think
people
that's,
want a skill
yeah.
though? Like what do we
Yeah,
change?
oh, there's that four options, right? Faster, AFK, more GP incentive, and I forgot the last one, but there's, you know, oh, more fun. Any of
Is
those things. You can add unlocks to that, but I guess you can change GP to incentive if you like.
Yeah, I mean my follow-up to that was going to be, is GP incentive really on the table with botting right now? And again, maybe a year or two ago, I would say, well, yeah, definitely at higher levels. But we have bots doing like blood shard thieving with 200 mil experience. We have bots doing nature runes.
There's bots doing corrupted gauntlet.
There are bots doing everything. Someone showed Kriskies has a friend. No names. I don't know the name, but there's a friend running 20 TOA max level complete Blood Torva kitted accounts that are fully botted from level 1.
Yeah.
4 billion GP a day. What are you gonna do? Every facet of the game is bot. It doesn't matter what it is. Inferno, TOA, Chambers, Torva, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Bots run it. We have to accept that more or less. They're not going away, but it's scary as well. But yes, fundamentally, we have to accept that GP and our methods from skilling won't really cut it.
Yeah, just Jagex needs to invest more into the anti-cheat team. You know, whether they need, I mean, RuneLight is now an official client for the game. So Jagex has some control, Jagex has control over it. So they should modify it to where it captures mouse movement data. You can tell a lot about a person based upon their mouse movement.
That you can't offer that as an incentive. So offering unlocks might be the next best thing. Whether that be the quest that you can now do, so that you can make a good money maker from that, or whatever it is. That's not the skilling. That's not the skilling. That's the GP. That's the incentive from the reward from whatever you're getting. That might be one of the strongest arguments behind um, skill gating quests in particular.
No, I think so. It at least gives some sort of purpose. I mean, there's varying incentives across skills. Like construction, for example, is probably the best example of a skill that gives you a tremendous amount of utility as you progress it. But then there are other skills like, fire making, for example, where you get really nothing out
Yeah,
of
it's
it.
nothing.
Okay, so jumping back over to comments here,
Mhm.
somebody said, this is a slippery slope. People are just going to continue asking for easier and easier methods, and eventually we're just going to end up with 80k XP per hour AFK methods.
Yeah, my piece on this is that this is a doomer argument. This is
The slippery slope players are just going to continue asking for using easier methods eventually. Actually, I would actually say this is such a so slippery slope is kind of I mean, it can be valid in some instances, but this is I would almost say that it's actually an argumental fallacy at this point because ADK experience per hour, that's pretty ridiculous. Like I don't think I mean there's not really anything in the game other than NMZ that's ADK experience per hour that's AFK.
Expecting bad things to happen. And I had a conversation with a few people about this, and it was more or less one of we as the skidding community have not seen things that make us confident in Jagex's ability to balance this over time. And I don't deny that for them, that is exactly the case. So this is an argument that I can't really refute in terms of what they believe. They believe that firmly, and that's their right to do so. But I will say that Jagex has done a very good job of keeping old school, and the player base count has been rising. So
They have
maybe
done a
old
pretty good
school
job so
can
far.
continue to do that, and
Not
maybe
perfect,
that's
but
okay.
pretty good
Like
job.
you have to accept there are going to be some small concessions to make along the way. But if the game is overall getting better and people are enjoying it more and playing more, this overall isn't a bad thing. I grant that if it went full RS3, 2 million XP an hour in every skill, or 500k AFK XP an hour, we got some problems. But no one, including myself, is arguing for that, and I don't think many players coming into the game want that to happen. Um, some power creep for skilling over time is acceptable. Some, very small and some. But they've been very careful. I mean, the AFK methods, yes, they exist, but the high bounds of each skill XP an hour haven't really changed for a long time. Beyond, like, I don't know, a range XP at Zebak or something silly that they do actually end up patching because they care about it. It's one of those core things to the game where they're really never going to change it. They're really never, as much as all of us hate, not all, but most of us hate polling for a fair few reasons. I'm not going to dive into it, but a lot of us hate polling at the high level. They're not going to get rid of it. And it doesn't matter how much we complain for years on end, many, many years now on end, that some of these things we don't like, it's integral to the game. And that grind, that XP rate, that constant, like, 4,000 hours to max won't change. But adding these methods won't do it either. So it's not going to make it a faster time. It might make it a slight bit less annoying. Not a bad thing.
Every skill is in a good place right now, and it does not need a wider variety of content.
Why are there 100,000 members in Star Mining Discord? Maybe that's a good pointer. Why are there people who I know personally who refuse to train mining at any point in time? Even with, maybe not with Star Mining nowadays, they're actually gravitating towards it. But I think there are some very clear indicators you can point to say that actually every skill is not in a good place. A good place would mean that players are willing to train it through some method. And that goes back to the idea of actually some things really aren't tolerable. So let's make it tolerable. Mining, runecrafting, and agility spring to mind, although runecrafting at 77 is realistically quite AFK, and getting there's not too bad. So again, sticking the argument just flat on agility is like fine for me. But players just refuse to train it. Why are there 100,000 people in Star Mining Discord? It wouldn't be in a good place. People wouldn't be joining Star Mining Discord if players enjoyed it enough to want to train it. So I don't know how that's a good faith argument. I don't think it is.
Should we be making adjustments to skilling based on the new generation of players who are coming into the game?
Yeah, this is an interesting argument. A lot of players play other MMOs or other games where they get things much faster. In particular, other MMO players might realize or be interested in trying the game for whatever reason, and they're accustomed to skipping straight to endgame. More so nowadays, where you have in crazy XP&R methods, or like you just get gear for free. I'll use Lost Ark as an example. They're doing a fresh start server, and within 2 hours of playing that, I was a higher level than I was in a month of grinding on the main game. That's a bit of a leap because the game is kind of dying, and I just wanted to try the bosses, and that's okay. But I appreciate that other people in other circumstances want to speed up stuff to get there to the end game quicker. Um,
All right, so the comment was every skill's in a good place right now and doesn't need a wider variety of content. Uh, Mining, though, VM kind of sucks. MLM sucks. I mean, MLM is the bet. It's really the only option, unfortunately. And upper level is not AFK. Just saying.
And so, should you make adjustments to these players? Maybe. I'm not convinced that we should be doing it, but I am convinced yet again that the skills should be fun to train. Back to the original idea, this is a bit strawmanny. This isn't the fundamental problem here. So I don't know. I'm not really for it or against it. I think we should improve skills so they're fun to train, and we need to get them to at least the point where they're tolerable to train, so that people engage with it on some level. Doesn't matter where they come from. Doesn't matter in what case. Um, I guess that's the same thing as it was at the start of this. Same reasoning.
I'm going to get up on my soapbox for a second.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm going to give a personal anecdote here. But I guess, first of all, it sets the stage. I play old school 2PVM. That is what I enjoy in old school. I enjoy playing in Ultimate Ironman, which sounds a little bit weird because that's slowing down the progression. Everything's slower on an Ultimate Ironman. But ultimately, PVM is what I enjoy. I do not enjoy training skills because I do not find skilling fun.
For me, it's almost the opposite. I actually hate bossing because you're at the mercy of RNG. With skilling, you at least know there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I recognize that there are people in the community who do find skilling fun. I'm not one of those people. We recently had a poll where they pulled a brand new skill, sailing, right? And in polling this new skill, my knee jerk reaction was, I do not want a new skill to have to train. I hate skilling. Skilling's a means to an end for me. This is just going to be something else that I have to grind. But I also thought to myself, bringing in a new skill is going to bring in a ton of new players. Just from like a game growth and marketing perspective, this is something that is ultimately, and I think objectively, going to be healthy for the growth and trajectory of the game. And ultimately, I voted yes for sailing. And that's not to say like, look at me, I'm putting the game's needs above my own. Like, I'm not trying to give myself a pat on the back here. I'm saying that I think it's really easy to hyper focus on the aspects that we enjoy as individuals in this game. But ultimately, if we want RuneScape to stick around, you have to be willing to accept some level of change and some level of catering to whatever the current gaming market is. Otherwise, you're just going to bleed players and you're not going to be able to onboard new players. So that's my soapbox moment for now.
There was a period of time where I believe old school nearly died out up until they started adding a massive chunk of it, potentially, well, not potentially, but PVM updates. So, I mean, it kind of was on that downward spiral. And it's only when this next level progression of getting good into PVM and this new horde of content came out that it started to rise. If the point is that like players don't want these updates, aren't willing to make these compromises to the extent that they're okay with the game dying, I mean, we're not playing the same game. I don't want to have that conversation with those people at the end of the day. I'd rather seek for a better middle ground than really just accept the game is going to die if you don't get updates. You need updates fundamentally, is what that's all about, though. And it's okay to have them. It's okay to discuss them, but don't just flatly deny that they're bad or useless or take away from the game when they do much more than that.
This next one was one of my favorite responses to you.
I'm ready.
Okay. We should offer idle PVM methods so people who like to
Yes.
PVM can still get the benefits without having to focus on it.
I love this because it is so silly. Yeah, I'm gonna half leave this to you because I know what's gonna come, and I've touched on it earlier. But PVM has this inbuilt system where if you want to go slow, you can just do that. And if you want to have AFK methods for bosses, you can do that. Case in point, Tebow's Aura, Mage's Aura. You're not playing at max efficiency. You want to take your
should offer idle PVM methods. It's people who don't like PVM. Ooh, this is an interesting question. Hey, this is my kind of question. Idle PVM methods. I mean, less intensity for sure, but completely idle? I mean, let's not get fucking crazy, you know. But flinching methods? Oh, yeah.
Your eyes off the screen. I did about 3 to 4,000 AFKs Aura in combination with high efficiencies Aura to get both mutagens, which I am very happy about. And I ended up doing more AFKs Aura because I wanted to watch TV shows on the side.
Yeah, variety is good.
I'm still putting appropriate effort in, and I'm doubling my kill time, which is terrible. And maybe you could make the case that it's not terrible enough; it should be even worse than that. And you know what? I'm okay with that. And people are saying this to like, how would you feel if it happened to PVM? I'm okay with it. I don't care. Just do it, right? So it's not a good argument because it's not what I was complaining about. And even if you said like, what if it happened to you? Okay, great. The bigger problem is like, what if someone says, but for Blood Torva's not AFKable. You have to put effort in. That's a bit of a different argument, I guess. It's like, what if you take the ultra super prestigious thing and then make it so you can AFK your way to that? I don't quite know how I feel about that in that case, but I think it's fair to say that that's in a bit of a different category. That's called aspirational content. That's something that's actually meant to be designed to be difficult. I don't think skilling is meant to be designed to be difficult, and so there's the difference in that.
That's actually a pretty solid, it's a pretty solid take, actually. Yeah.
Um, and if you want to go for 200 mil, then I mean, okay, like there's no difference from like doing. I'll leave this bit to you here, but like, let's say the goal is Fire Cape or the goal is Jad Pet. It's a prestigious enough thing. Like, it's pretty cool to get. Does it stop you like in PVM from just AFKing it out? No, and people might not believe that. So here we go.
Yeah, good segue. I mean, my response to this question is this stuff already exists. The example that you're talking about, I have a video of me literally hands off keyboard and mouse, 5 to 6 minutes at a time, AFKing the fight caves all the way through, just drinking prayer
I actually didn't know you could do that. What the fuck?
potions occasionally to keep it going. Even the Inferno. I have a video where I
You can't AFK the fucking Inferno, can you? I'm gonna go do the Inferno if that's the case.
the Inferno for 5 hours, and I play Mario Kart during the entire thing. Which, funny enough, a lot of people thought that video was a guide. That video was not a guide, you guys. That was a joke. But the point is, like,
Yeah.
even these high level pieces of content, Chambers, you can fully leech all the way through. TOA, you can fully leech all the way through. Tob, you do have to kind of participate more in Tob, but almost every single PVM encounter does already have a super low effort method of accomplishing it. And even some PVM is just super low effort and kind of idle in general. Like, if you want to go all the way down to like KBD or Giant Mole, which are your entry points for PVM, like, you're barely having to pay any attention to those. So to this commenter, I would say this already exists in the game. And to your point with like the super aspirational content, I think that's a separate issue. But I think that the counter, which I am going to direct back to you, Addy, is that 200 mil all is a super prestigious effort, and we could technically use idle methods to 200 mil all to get that prestige level.
Yeah.
So how would you respond to that?
Do the math on it, I guess. How much XP an hour? How much time would it take to reach 200 mil?
Yeah.
I came up with a figure based on 20k and XP an hour methods for the entire thing. It's like 230,000 hours. I'm gonna be dead before I get there.
Oh my
And other
god.
players are like, okay, well, you're only going to do that for the certain skills you absolutely hate. You're still going to use relevant fast training methods for the skills otherwise. Okay. It's still going to be like 50 plus thousand hours. And the competitive rate for that is, I assume, not near that. It's like 20,000. If the goal is to compete, you're actually giving players an in to compete. You're making it more competitive in the same way that, again, it's not tolerable to want to do it. But if you have that in, you might start it. You're actually introducing players into that grind. You're introducing players into that community. So really, if anything, it's a good thing for those that want to say that more players are skillers, and we have a bigger group here, and we can work for more things for that side of the community. Um, I don't know. It's a bit silly. Like the PVM one is, even if you said it to me and said like, what if you let someone AFK Inferno and it takes like 3 days to get the cape and they have to click once every now and then? Okay, I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter to me. I'm okay with it, and I think most other players probably are.
It's better than that than people like paying for capes. I mean,
If anything, like Inferno is a bit past.
there's so many bots in the game that even getting the Inferno cape is kind of devalued because I mean, bots can do it, and the community kind of assumes that you bought the cape anyway, in a lot of instances. So
I care more about like Blood Torva at this point in time, and PVM is different like that because we have more difficult challenges that come along. There's a level of progression again to PVM that matters more for other things. Um, so screw it, Inferno. Inferno. I don't care anymore about Inferno. I care about Blood Torva right now, and in a few years I'll care about maybe Colosseum, and you can have Blood Torva. It doesn't matter to me. And really, the effort that you put in is the effort that's tied to your account. That's what really matters. That's what should matter. You shouldn't care so much about what other people like how they want to play the game or what gives them enjoyment. And really, you should care about only offering a method that gives them an in and gives them a starting point to want to do these things. AFK Inferno, have it. Give us 10k XP and our agility instead. Not my problem.
I just had an idea while you were saying that I just want to throw out there.
Mm-hmm.
What if you could sort of like look at a player's stats and not only see what level they are, but see how many hours they have spent doing that. And then
that'd be interesting.
that would be a
EHP.
very okay, fair point. I guess yeah, I guess you
Yeah.
can already look at that if you've opted into it. But let's say it was built into the game and you could immediately tell if someone, was 3 ticking granite all the way to 200 mil versus mining stars. Like, do you think
At that point, man, who gives a shit? Like if you're sitting there looking people oh, excuse me. Yeah, if you're sitting there, you're looking people up and like sitting there looking how long they've been doing a skill and then like getting out a calculator and working out the math of what skill method did they use to get there. Like calm the fuck down and go outside at that point. Jesus.
that would maybe solve some of the prestige arguments here around skilling?
Leaderboards based on EHP, I think, would be quite appealing to a few players.
Very
I
few.
don't. This is a much more interesting question for someone who's into
Let's be honest, probably mentally ill peoples.
competitive skilling. I think a lot of the leaderboards for PVM do show
If you care
EHP,
that much,
and I
come
think
on.
there are competitives in that as well. So I have no doubt there would both be competitors, and it would be an interesting category. Um, but I don't know how the overall feel on that is for skillers in general. I think for those who care, they already track it is the thing. Built in wouldn't change much for those that already care. Giving it in to more people again is a good thing. So I'm probably for it. Um, there's some downsides like you're going to be flamed for doing these methods. Stop caring about what other people tell you. Do the things you want to do. Have fun with it. It's not about what other people think of you or what you think of them.
True.
You see someone's account and funnel cape, maybe they bought it. They probably did. It's like more than 50% bought at this point. Stop
That's pretty sad. More than half the people buy fucking capes, dude. Damn.
caring about other people's achievements. Choose stuff that matters to you and go for it. It's a healthier way to play, and it's gonna get you less hung up on things that don't really matter at the end of the day. So I know it's like tough advice to follow because you do care what people have and you do care what people think of you, but you can begin to separate, and certain things you can over time just let it not matter a little bit more. It takes time to change your view on this, of course. But yeah.
So I have one last comment to go through, but it's
Hmm.
a two-part. So
Yeah.
first, to set the stage, agree or disagree, skilling
Okay.
requires skill.
Sepulcher, yes. Um, everything else, nope.
No. My gut reaction is no.
Okay.
Skilling, and we should probably define what skill is to set the stage here. So, what do you mean by skill for skilling?
That man, that's a tough question.
Yeah,
I was
right.
not
Uh,
prepared for a follow up question. I would say
This is
my
entirely subjective.
I would
There's
say
no right
my
answer.
definition of this would be
Skill of like learning how to like maybe get the timings down of looking at this monitor and then looking at another monitor to, you know, really the only thing that requires skill would be sepulcher. I mean, for example, when you're fletching, you don't really fail at fletching. I mean, come on.
like mechanical skill, because there's
Yeah,
repetitive actions that you're repeating over a long duration, and you could argue that that is skill. And then there's also variety in your mechanical responses and how you're having to react to a piece of content.
Then again, fishing can maybe require a little bit of skill with temporos. You know, if you're doing the max permit per hour method, or if you're doing the max XP per hour method, it takes a little bit of like game intuition to know when the fires come, how to deal with the fires. So that could require a little bit of skill.
I grant there's skill if that's the definition. I think for the average player playing the game, skill is a non-factor when it comes to
Yeah, but for the most part, let's just say skilling doesn't require skills. We can just keep it simple.
skilling, and it's more about the time you put in, which is what people truly care about. Um,
True.
it's once skilling becomes competitive, does it become a skilled activity? It's funny using the words together like that, but I think that's more or less how it goes. I don't care how, like, for example, PVMers play the game. I don't really think that PVM is particularly high skilled until you start to care about it. And so this is maybe the big reason why people get so defensive and care so much about it, is because you're already in a position to care. You are in that position where you do value it and you do consider it to be skilled, so you are annoyed when it gets taken away. But for those that don't care or are getting into it, it's not a skilled activity, and that's the majority of players. In the same way that the majority of players don't give on how much. Well, okay, I was going to go for a bad example, but the majority of players don't really care too much about how you choose to PVM. That's up to you. That's subjective. That's entirely fine if you choose to go slow or go fast. And in fact, for the longest time, it was considered like a bit strange to want to go fast for Inferno or for a lot of other skilling stuff. Like the speedrunners are the weirdos of the community in both sides. If you're skilling or PVMing, you're still strange.
Yeah, the tryhards definitely do judge you on how many kills per trip at Bandos you get, which I did like 1,000 KC log. I was only averaging like 7 KC per trip.
To the bigger player base. So there's skill, and it's subjective once you hit those points on either side. This isn't like a divide. This is just like a
You know,
scale
it's
for each.
the
Each
BOFA
one or the other.
6-0 method.
And when you hit that, and when you
I'd
begin to
always
value
fuck up a
yourself,
little bit.
you will say there is skill. But for the average player, they might loosely understand there is some there, but not care about it. And that's more so the issue.
And the follow up to that is the difficulty of skilling comes from the hours that you have to put into it. Having
Mm-hmm.
limited methods to train a skill and skills taking a long time to train made achievements more impressive, especially back in the day. AFK methods undermine those achievements.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. And the way I was looking at this, in my brain had formed some weird analogy.
Yeah, I mean, that it can happen. But I mean, if the only achievement is like, if the only difficulty is because you sunk a shit ton of time into it, I mean, that kind of is what MMOs are at its core, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I would say yeah, investment is more impressive
Where
because it's like we're all limited. So
Max in his video often used this idea of
Nobody
a
has
hurdle
infinite
or
time.
an obstacle in the way. And I was understanding this obstacle to be a literal hill that you have to choose to climb or go around.
So it's kind of impressive that you can like, you know, take the time out of your own life to, do this activity.
In terms of an AFK method, but that's not quite right. The idea here is that you can choose to go up the slope at a different incline. It's not about going around. You are taking more time to go up it. And this slope, this actual definitive slope, can be defined as effort times time. So you can go up very quickly with high effort and low time, or you can go around, or not around, but like, how do you know how like if you have a cliff, you can just like zigzag up it. That's the equivalent of doing the AFK method. You are still climbing it. You are still putting effort in. You have to put the effort in to get up there. But this goes back to, do players consider it effort, or is it just zero time? Because I agree as well, if it's zero time, that would be like not being present for there. That effort part is gone. So this whole argument drives back again to the idea of what we can decide on is appropriate effort for reward. But I think the analogy is not quite right. It's not about skipping it. You're still going up it if we decide on what's fair. And so let's get to that discussion with the skillers to decide what's appropriate, and stop denying that's an acceptable route, I guess.
I like that way of looking at it. That's a good
Mhm.
analogy.
Yeah.
That's all the comments that I had. Maybe some of the most contentious or most frequent comments that I saw come up.
Yeah.
I imagine you may have a few other points from either Max's video or from tweet thread that you might want to respond to.
Yeah, I can bring up a few. I actually have a script for countering the video, and I think it's a bit mean if I put it out there. So what I'm going to do instead of the whole script is pick maybe 2 points and make a statement about how players should go about trying to make change, and how they should go about trying to reason arguments, especially if you're doing like a scripted video or trying to make a point or just like trying to convince people basically. So my belief, and I think this is more or less the case, is that if you have strong beliefs about something, there's usually one or two fundamental things that you deep root believe in. And usually it's about getting to the core of those. Because as we've seen today, a lot of the arguments that thrown out, again, on both sides, are just huge strawmans and not actually representing the argument properly.
That's
I had
fair.
this problem all day on stream. It's like, I just explained 5 times that it's about the effort to reward ratio. And someone's going on like, you just want new players to get into the game. So you
That's gotta be annoying. Like fucking dealing with those kind of fucking people. That'd be annoying.
can make money from streaming because you have a larger audience. It's like, I didn't even mention this. It didn't even cross my mind until you said it. It's just, yeah. So straw man happens, but if you want to convince people and have good reasons, then it's important to have good justifications for things as well. Understanding what that really means and how that ties into things is super important just for everyday life, not just old school. And I care enough about it to be careful about how I phrase things, word things, and in discussion, I'll often ask for clarification or definitions, as I did with you earlier. So more players need to do this to begin with. And when you have a responsibility for making videos and things like that, you can't give players strawmans. You can't give players bad reasons for thinking.
You should always. I mean, it comes down to kind of philosophy. Like in the field of philosophy, you try to you don't straw man, but you try to steal man. You try to take the best angle of their argument and attack the best angle. It's pretty basic.
Things. Um, and you have to, secondly, approach it with a critical mindset. So that is to say that if I propose something in defense of skilling methods for whatever reason, I best be sure that's actually true, and not just like dive bomb into thinking that must be the case, because then people are going to repeat it. So once you teach someone something and you give them a reason about something, whether it's not true or not doesn't matter. It's going to be really hard to undo that work. And as a community, for anything, you should be very careful about how you teach people stuff. So I word stuff very particularly, or I try and go back, or I will completely deny what I said, and or not deny, but like say I was wrong about something in particular. So I'll get onto the example. I'll just take a screenshot of it because maybe that's easier. You don't have to show it or anything. I just want to like this is like half of it, and it's just like a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 20 points that are all under this just lack of critical thinking, lack of justification. And you know what? Sometimes my arguments suck too, but at least I'll try to justify them. If someone does a better job of proving that's not the case, I'll accept it. And people in this position need to understand that that's a really important thing when trying to both convince other people and get to.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much my criticisms throughout this entire video have just been my opinion, which really doesn't mean anything. So, I mean, you know,
Towards sort of a truer statement. Um,
it's not really like a true or false object, yeah, objective to a lot of these questions and stuff. But as someone who like fucking sucks at this game, I like easier methods being in the game. Just sitting there trying to be all tick perfect, gear switching, prayer switching, avoiding stuff on the ground. It's too much.
it matters, and maybe that's like doesn't matter to everyone, but if you're going to go down the route of trying to convince people, do a better job of that. Okay, spiel over.
No, I think
Yeah,
I think that you clearly have put a lot of thought into this and care about it. If one, you've been taking notes the entire time that we've been talking, and two,
yeah.
you wrote out an entire script analyzing a lot of the points that Max went over in his video. Um, would you potentially be interested if we could get either Max or Automelogy or not Jebrim, he's not invited.
Not Jebber. No.
But if someone from the
Wait, who's this Jebrim dude? The fuck? Why are they so against him? All right, I don't know why I looked him up. I find that interesting. I don't know what the drama is there in that.
HLC skilling side was interested, would you be willing to do a live debate or discussion with them to kind of go through some of these points in a more balanced format?
Yes, absolutely. I would say the only thing that is important to me right now is that because we've had a look at some of these things today and come to like fairly fair conclusions, I would imagine.
God damn
Um,
it! I fucked this
we
camera.
need to address the actual point of what is fair effort to reward. And if it's not gonna, and like we can go through all these essential strawmans from both sides about how it's like it's unfair or it's like good for players and stuff. It doesn't matter about any of that. I want someone who agrees on the fact that maybe it is better overall, and can we find a decent compromise? I'm willing to do the debate and stuff and all that. That's fine. Like, I'm probably gonna literally look up from my list of like 5, 7 things and just be like,
Another thing, this is a lot of this just all boils down to opinions, but I think in general, if we're talking about the general population of people who play MMOs, they like easy content.
pick one off because it's the same 7 arguments all day, every day. It has been on stream, it has been on Twitter, it has been on YouTube. So people are clearly in the same way that like people are seeing this idea of 9-year-olds have a tougher mentality. You should just toughen up a bit. Like, no, that's not actually really the case, and I can prove it to you. And I can do that for all 7 arguments and just toss it back at them. So it's a waste of time if I can do that. But I mean, maybe they'll bring up something that's entirely new, but it should be sound, reasonably sound, or justified in some manner. Um, some side note to this is that even if you justify something like that, it comes down to a lot of subjectiveness about what is actually fun in the game, I guess.
This whole conversation is mostly subjective. Yeah, I mean, my comments, his comments, are two very different players of the game.
And so you have to start from the perspective that players actually don't find skills fun. And if you can't agree on that, you're not going to be able to get anywhere. If it's someone that thinks that actually all skills are fun and players are just like two little bitches to get into it, you are not going to make headway or progress with them. So it depends who it is going to be. I'm willing to try it out, see what it's like, but they have to hopefully keep that one in mind.
Yeah, well, okay, there you have it. If you're in the HLC skilling community, you're a content creator, hit me up on Discord, and we'll set something up if you're interested. I think this has been a really good discussion, though, all the way through PVM, through the skilling stuff. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up here?
Honestly, we've covered a lot. To be honest, that was a good one. Give me a second. I don't think so. Of all the current issues, these are like the interesting ones, and we covered the PVM side of things pretty well. Honestly, not really. That was comprehensive.
Cool, good. That means I did
Yeah,
my job,
that,
so I'm happy.
yeah,
to feel
more or
that
less.
way. Addy, where can people find you on social media?
Twitch.tv/Adacon is where I
Yeah,
stream every
I'll
day.
I'll put a
or
link
more
to
or less
this
every
video
day.
in the
Try
chat
to, but
too.
I'm terrible with planning and timing, and I like to sleep. Otherwise, Twitter, it's the same handle. It's just Adacon, and same for YouTube as well. I have a Discord you can reach me on if you're interested in talking to me directly. I think I'm pretty good at responding to more or less every single person who reaches out in any format, and I think that's pretty important if I have the time to do so. So don't be afraid. I like discussing stuff like this, but be reasonable about it, be respectful about it, and that's about it. So yeah, Discord, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, it's all the same /Adacon except the Discord, which I am. It's got a generic link on or whatever, you know.
Awesome, and I
Yeah,
don't
good
know
shit,
if
good
you're
shit.
if you were referring to the top Discord, but I will be putting that in the description.
Different one, but yeah, definitely a good resource as well.
Perfect. If you made it this far, consider leaving a like and subscribing on your way out, and let me know if you'd like to see more podcasts on the channel. A huge thank you to Adicon for joining me. I'll be leaving links to all his socials below, as well as the link to his new Top Learner Discord. Please go show him some love. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.
Well, that was that. It was a pretty good video. Ooh. Man, it's taking forever to get 95 Slayer.
All right. Some of our favorite streamers are doubling down on the streaming is right.
Oops.
Some of our favorite streamers are doubling down on the streaming is socially draining more than regular jobs.
Oh my god, guys, that's so fucking hard. Oh my god.
Hassan's unhappy.
I canceled on Twitter again, obviously, as always.
Oh, fuck.
This time it was for me saying that I run out of my social battery after 9.5 hours of streaming in a way that like a real job doesn't.
Uh-huh. Oh, God.
And everyone immediately
You
like
never
they
had a
clicked
real job, dumbass.
I did. I worked in sales, so it was like a very social
True.
job as well. So I know exactly what like people pleasing looks like, and it's like fucking annoying and awful, right? So I was making a comparison between like my experience as a salesperson versus my experience as a Twitch streamer, and I was like, it's so soul sucking, like it's so soul crushing, and I can't socialize after that, and I feel so bad because I was talking about going to March's house. March at a housewarming party. None of you guys were invited because you're not cool.
I was invited and I didn't remember until yesterday.
I was there, right? And I brought Kaya, and she was being the best girl. But I also felt like I was looking like an asshole to every single person because I was like pouting the whole time. I'm really fucking tired. I take one drink
Oh,
with
it's always
March.
the Hassan show.
I take one drink with, and I was like, I have to get out of here. Like
That's crazy.
I'm so
You
tired.
got hungover immediately?
Yeah, I think it's because like I'm fucking tired after 9.5 hours of streaming, right? They clipped it like 30 seconds of it to be like, Hassan, streamer says this dumb socialist streamer says like fucking real jobs are way easier than streaming. And it's like, that's not what I was saying. Here's the fucking context. Nobody gives a shit. There's like hundreds of thousands of fucking likes. Led me to actually delete Twitter.
What?
I deleted Twitter from my phone. Yeah.
Mm.
It's really important for me to have Twitter on my phone for my job. Obviously, I need to like constantly be fucking up to date on what the fuck's going on in the world. But I feel like at this point, it's just not worth it. It's so like being
Might
on
actually be the
Twitter and
smartest
being
thing.
online
Yeah.
is
I mean-
literally like being in a room where you're making the dumbest people on the fucking planet yell at you nonstop.
And so you're not using Twitter ever again.
No, I
No, he just took
He'll
it
use
off
it-
his phone.
He'll use it on his PC.
yeah, because I need to have it for my
Motherfuckers got
but,
painted
but yeah,
fingernails and
'cause
shit. What the
I
fuck,
just been,
dude?
I was like looking at it and it was like fucking me up.
Well, yeah, you were up really late last night.
No, I went to sleep at like 11.
Alright.
And I just woke up at 4 and I was like going through Twitter and I was just like, fuck this, dude. Like, what the fuck am I doing? I deleted it.
Good for you.
Yeah.
This is a positive step in your mental health.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish there was a world where you could just like if I could just like quit and restart as like a VTuber and be somebody totally different.
Yes.
Because I feel like I've ruined so many first impressions, and I've just made so many mistakes online that are just like micro
It's so funny you say that because like
whatever
you
that I
didn't.
just wish I could start over.
You didn't, but you feel that way, and it feels very real to you. But like from where I'm standing, with the amount of like genuine fucking hatred and vitriol that I have, I feel like yours is because you're a woman. That's it.
No, I've done some stupid
No,
shit.
you haven't. No,
Yeah, one
shut
time
up.
I.
Shut up. No,
Oh, wait.
no, 100. Okay, go ahead. I
nope.
didn't mean like literally shut up.
Nope.
Go ahead.
Nope.
I can't believe you.
You just might not be built for this lifestyle. Doesn't make the job hard. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, some of you content creators are
True.
brittle as
True.
and Hassan has got to be the most brittle person. He's always crying and whining and bitching about the fact that people are. It's so unfair. People just hate me. Shut up.
Yeah.
Oh, shut up. You're just brittle. The job's not hard. You're soft. That's not the same thing.
The job's not hard.
This
it's
job is
soft.
not difficult.
You're
These guys are just soft. And if you look at their history of what they did as work before, not a single one of them had a truly difficult job. Not one. Hassan wanted to lie about he was in sales. Bruv, you did that for like a couple months. That was it. And then you went up to work for your fucking uncle because you're a Nepo baby. Most of these people have never had to do difficult jobs. And the ones who do generally don't find this shit hard. Asmongold did a 1 hour and a half video on this topic. I cut it down a little bit to some more important parts.
Go ahead.
And we'll take a look.
Obviously, being a streamer is not very taxing physically. It's clearly not. And I think for a lot of people, it's not very taxing mentally either. I think streaming is a great job, and I would rather stream than have any other job in the world. There are obviously negatives that exist with streaming, but those negatives don't outweigh the positives. The big difference is the monetary difference between other jobs and being a streamer. Being paid a lot of money doesn't make problems go away. Being paid a lot of money makes it easier to deal with problems. There's actually studies that have been done on this, and I can show you the graph. I'll do it now because I think people are going to disagree. Because for a lot of people, and this is really the reality here, is that I'm preaching to a very tough audience, arguing my point of view. Because for the majority of people that are watching me and disagreeing and getting angry, the biggest problem in their life is money. So for them, the idea that you can't, like, that money isn't the problem, well, this is going to very much upset them because they look at it from the perspective of like, well, if I had money, then this would totally solve all my problems. And I think if you work at many jobs, that's absolutely true. And I want to show that with a graph. So let me go ahead and do that. These are some graphs right here that I can show. And these are studies that have been done over the years with a number of different people. And basically what you see happening is that, especially whenever you're reaching, again, into this like leading up to like $200,000 a year, more money will absolutely make you more happy. Absolutely it will, 100%. But that does not necessarily mean that more money infinitely will just make you more and more happy. And that's the perspective that I'm making. That's the point that I'm making.
That's the point I was making too. That's why you should turn your stream off. You make millions. At 200K, you'd be just as happy or close to it. Turn your stream off after 5 hours. That's the point I'm making. You have the luxury to do that.
Yeah.
See that graph? Everyone else lives on the bottom of that curve where it's fucking dog. They got complete financial insecurity. They don't know if they'll ever be able to afford a house, be able to send their kids to college.
Ooh, now we're, goddamn, these trues he's like machine gunning these trues right now.
Be able to take vacations, be able to pay college and pay off their debt. That's where most people live. You live in the upper bracket where infinity is not in existence, but you're going to continuously be happier. Marginally with time, but still happier. So why don't you just turn off your stream and then stop dealing with all the extra stress that you're self-imposing?
If 9 hours of stuff, do half. If half of that is stuff, you're still going to be good.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
And I know there's gonna be people, well, you're not going to be as popular. That's not true, okay? There's plenty of streamers who take months off and they're fine. I know this. As a content creator, I take months off. I think I took 2 weeks off in February. The year before, I took a month off in like September, and then I took another month off, I think, in May. I took 2 months off out of the year. Why? Because I can afford to. Why? Because I know, all right, if I keep doing this work, it's not going to be that great. So I'm going to be responsible. And because this job affords me the privilege of choosing my hours and stopping and going whenever I want, I can. And guess what? My audience is amazing. They come back. They respect it. They appreciate it. They're like, yo, if you post me there, and if you don't, take care of yourself. I respect that.
So were you saying that you're taking a break before it becomes taxing and unbearable?
Yeah. And you know what? I can. I could never do that at my old jobs.
Nope.
Yes. So I would never compare.
No. Oh, they're gonna ask questions.
Oh yeah.
And you're gonna be on sick leave, and they're gonna ask questions.
Yeah.
I don't want to go. So what did your doctor say?
Money is such a big problem in their life that whenever they hear anybody say anything that is even adjacent to money isn't a problem, it immediately, and I'm not trying to be mean, but it unironically triggers them. And so they stop thinking about what's actually being said, and they start arguing against something that they've heard before. They get emotional about it. And I understand that. I've been in that position myself. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I ever said. Yeah. And I don't think that that's really what Hassan was trying to say, because he was really talking about, and like also like, I don't like, because I've watched Hassan for years. I've known Hassan. I've talked to Hassan. I don't think that's really what he thinks. Now, maybe he should have said it in a way that was better, but I don't think that he thinks that. So like, we can talk about the way that he communicated that, and if it could have been communicated in a better way, sure. But I'm talking about like what the intent was behind the communication. These guys are right. I mean, they're right that, yeah, he did say that. I think that it was very clear in my mind that wasn't what he intended. So like,
I can only go on what he said. Like, I cannot go on what you think he said. I don't know that. I can just go about what he actually said. And what he actually said was garbaggio. That's it. And it's okay. It doesn't make you... You said that. That was a dumb take. Move on. You think that's not what he said or this and that. How am I supposed to know?
People didn't take him out of context. He just misspeaks.
That's the difference.
Those two things are not the same.
Thank you.
If you're over here, you're like, oh, I don't really like black people. And then people are like, whoa, what the fuck? And you're like, no, the context was like, growing up, there's a lot of people who happen to be black who hurt me, and I didn't like those people.
That's not the same thing you
bitch,
said.
use the right words. That's your
not what
problem.
you said.
Don't get mad at people because you can't communicate and orate yourself properly.
If you're saying shit is out of context, but the rest of the context is in your head, it's not out of context. It's in your head.
You know, there's what people mean, there's what people feel, and there's what people actually say. And you said some really dumb shit. Not you specifically, but Hassan did. And then you came out and defended it very ardently based off what you thought he meant. Nobody's trying to hear that shit.
Yeah.
And I know Asmongold knows this, because a while back, he was telling game developers, I don't give a how hard your shit is. Nobody's trying.
Totally fucking true. Absolutely 100 fucking % true. And I said that with streaming. Absolutely. Nobody gives a fuck how you feel. And it's the same thing. Like, so you can make, and this might seem like a bit of whiplash because I'm talking about like two separate things, right? So like, I can talk about like the ethical world that I think is best and that I try to live by in the cases that I can, which is trying to listen and understand how other people feel and trying to like basically compromise with people by understanding them and taking them at face value and trying to empathize with what people's perspective is. I think this is a good thing. Back over here in reality, outside of my own ethical utopia, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck. This is the hypocrisy.
Here, make the fucking games.
Xavier's tweet was well-intentioned, and he went on to add a lot of important...
He made a lot of very good points. He did.
But I think it misses the perspective of the consumer.
I literally said that. And this is the thing, is developers need to stop. Like, nobody gives a fuck about, it's so hard. Shut the fuck up, pussy. Stop crying. Yeah. Either do it or you don't. Holy fuck. Just nobody cares about, it's so hard. Oh, well, this is... Bro, you're talking to people that work in construction, and you're going to say that it's hard? Your job could be more demanding than that. I don't know. But guess what? To them, it's not.
But now when it's you guys, like, we want... And you expect sympathy for what reason?
No, I don't expect it at all, and I know that I won't get it. No, he's totally right. This is a complete contradiction of what I'm saying, and that's what I was talking about before, with, like, how I think things should be versus how I think things are. And, like, in my opinion, I find it to be problematic that people think that way, but I also know that that's true.
Which, that's not even being good faith. And I mean, you can see that way. I think that's being incredibly charitable to someone that you have close ties to. Because I've seen you not be as charitable to game devs, for example, or to other streamers who've complained who you may not be friends with. So, to me, it's interesting that you extend this much charitability to Hassan. But like you said yourself, you have a very good relationship with him.
Yeah, also they're managed by the same company, Night.org or Night.co. So it's probably not in the best interest for content creators to feud with each other and they're getting managed by like the same like organization.
Strong one, and so that's why.
It's really not the same on so many levels, but anyways, I think we are saying the same thing as Asmongold. It's just that, well, no, Asmongold's saying the same thing as us. The difference is just that he's saying that, well, he can read minds, and I can't.
Oh, he knows Hassan, so I think he knows how he communicates.
So he can read his mind.
Sure, or he just understands them better. He can interpret things better because he understands somebody. It's
When
like
your
when you have a
name-
child.
when your-
It's like when you have a child. You know when you have a child and your child goes, woo, woo. So a lot of
my God. You want some pears and napkins, and then you want to take a nap, and
Yeah,
after that you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
take a 2-hour walk?
Yeah,
no problem. What the fuck?
Hassan's his baby boy.
No, but I like the idea of him reading minds because Asmongold sounds like a wizard name.
You know what's funny?
What's funny?
He made his career playing World of Warcraft.
See? Not crazy.
No, like
That's a wizard. This motherfucker's like a paladin or as another sorcerer or some shit like that.
Yeah.
A necromancer. I'm just flashing
Did you
shit.
say Negromancer?
Negromancer. Hey, what up, my dead people? What's up? Rise up.
That's fucking funny.
New York, LA, Philly, Chicago.
Oh my god, that's fucking funny.
That's Negromancer.
Oh my god.
I can just see that. You see the dude just bobbing in the cemetery and then undead just popping up. Yo, I'm not gonna lie.
New York, Miami, Frisco.
I'd be a crazy class for like some kind of voodoo undead necromancer.
Everybody, right? Negromancer.
Yeah. Papa, what's his name?
Papa Legba. No. C'est Baron Samedi.
Baron Samedi?
So, I mean, especially with like social media, right? Like, you have to be posting all the time. And of course you can take time off. Absolutely. But there is a risk to taking that time off. And I'm not saying that it's not a privilege to be able to do that. But what I am saying is that it doesn't come with a cost.
Turn it off after 5, but because they want to make more money, they keep streaming. And then they want to get up here and then complain about how hard it is. Who here gets to choose their fucking hours at work?
Not a lot of people.
The fact that you guys even have the goal to compare yourselves to regular people when
Not a lot of
extra
people.
hours of labor are rewarded with more and more money is insane.
Well, I think most people get paid overtime, to be fair. Yeah, I mean, if anybody is working extra and you're not being paid for that, you're not getting paid overtime. Not salary? Oh, yeah, that's definitely true. But if you're being paid hourly, you do get paid extra.
No. Especially not if you got a salary.
When you have a job, when there's some things that don't fit your description, that's overtime. It's overtime. You're not working overtime. You're just compressing more work within that time.
So you brought up the salary stuff. Yeah, salary's a thing. Most people who work salaries sometimes have to work 12-hour days and they just don't have a choice. They're just part of the game, okay? That is a thing for some people. Even at hourly jobs. You know one of the most infuriating things? Is that you can't even clock it in as overtime. But sometimes your boss is like, yo, can you handle this just before you leave? And you know that fucking work takes a good 30 minutes. But it's 10 minutes to close. So you can say no to your boss. But how do you think that shit? It be little things like that. When you've had a long fucking day, but you don't have a choice to opt out. You as content creators always have control over your lives in that regards when it comes to work. When you are working hourly, there's so many little things that happen just as you're about to leave work that make you stay. I even stay 5 minutes, y'all be pissing me the fuck off because you're not getting paid for that time.
5 minutes is never 5 minutes.
Yes.
First.
Yeah.
No,
First,
not at work time.
can you do this shit? It's gonna take only 5 minutes. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Never that. The second thing, what I hate the most is whenever you do overtime is you have to proceed to do overtime mathematics.
Yeah.
Because at some point, it happened to me when I was on the phone. You do overtime for a certain amount of time because you increase your tax bracket, you end up with less money than if you hadn't had done the overtime.
Because overtime is taxed at a different rate.
Oh
which
my
pisses
God.
you off, so you're already losing money. Like, I've had sales jobs, I've had military, I've had government, I've had it all. Okay, it fucking blows.
Yo.
Like you don't get compensated the same way. Like you guys get a flat rate no matter how many hours. Everything is incrementally more money. That's not the case for regular people. So they're actually rewarded less for spending more time at work. What's more, you work from home. What are the greatest privileges?
Oh
that
my
you guys
God,
have?
that's such a
You
big
don't have to
fucking
deal with long
true.
commutes like everyone else. Do you know how many people are literally dying? They are dying going to and from work. Because
Yeah.
they have 1 to 2 hour commutes. This is not my opinion either. I'll put up the graphs and the
You
studies.
just get into,
It's actually super nefarious for
you just get into car accidents. I mean, shit happens. Like, working at home is the fucking dream.
people's health and their mental health to have to do those long.
Oh, yeah.
So all those little details play into the fact that people look at your job. And at the end of the day, this is what it is with streaming. You can frame it however you want. You can say it's hard. People are gonna hear streaming and say you get paid to play video games. What people do as a hobby, you
Yeah.
get paid to do.
True.
They get paid millions, more than doctors, engineers, pilots, government, congressmen. They get paid to play video.
Now, this is, in my opinion, I understand it, but to be honest with you, I really don't respect it. I'm sorry, but I don't respect feeling that way.
I mean, they are usually doing more things than just playing a video game. Like, they are being usually like entertaining at a certain level.
Because it's an emotional perspective that's selfish. And I think that anybody out in the world has a right to own their own problems, and nobody else in the world has the right to take that away from them. And I really dislike this idea that because some person has it bad, they try to go out of their way to invalidate other people who have other problems that they deem less important. I think this is an incredibly toxic way of talking. It's an incredibly toxic way of looking at the world.
I'll say, we don't have the right to take away from you, but we do have the right to tell you shut the fuck up because we ain't trying to hear that shit.
Yeah.
We have the right. The same way you can voice it, we can tell you to shut the fuck up.
Mhm.
Let's say I have a stream and I'm complaining because my child has gastro. I'm like, it's really frustrating that my child has gastro. It's really difficult to have to deal with, which it is, right? Like, your child.
Why the fuck is my bit rate bad?
And your viewers are all people who lost their children in a recent war. Is it okay for me to be like, I don't give a fuck about the fact that your kid got gastro? When all your viewers are all, is that okay?
You're no kids.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't care about you.
Isn't it insensitive of you to be complaining about your gastro kid when everybody else lost their children like permanently? Is that okay to say like, I don't really give a fuck?
I think it's okay.
I think this is similar.
But it's okay for these
Multi-millionaire with all the options and financial flexibility, time flexibility in the world, complaining about the fact that their work is tiring to people who mostly have to work shit-end jobs.
And I really dislike this idea that because some person has it bad, they try to go out of their way to invalidate other people who have other problems that they deem less important. I think this is an incredibly toxic way of talking. It's an incredibly toxic way of looking at the world. And at the end of the day, I think that we're all very privileged in a lot of cases. That's why we're sitting on here with high-speed internet, probably in most of the cases, air-conditioned houses in a first-world country in many cases as well, according to my analytics, having conversations about this kind of stuff. We are all incredibly privileged, at least according to many other people in the world. I think this is the case with everybody's job. And you see this all the time on the internet.
Because you're well compensated, extremely well compensated for the level of difficulty of your job. And this is how most people internalize this and whether or not they want to hear about your suffering. How difficult is your job? How well do you get compensated for it? If your job is extremely difficult and hard to manage, but you get paid peanuts, complain as you want.
I don't think so. I think that actually I don't agree with that because if you look at, for example, like culturally, I think that culturally people definitely look down on construction workers. They look down on sanitation workers. Absolutely, that's true. And they get paid shit.
Who the fuck gets paid shit?
He doesn't know.
No. Who the fuck? Construction workers get paid shit?
They definitely don't get paid shit. But he just might not know. So if we're being charitable, he would have just chosen another job that doesn't get paid well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
He just doesn't know.
But
they definitely don't get paid well. You should know better.
Nigga.
To be fair, I didn't know this, but a lot of garbage men are apparently paid really well.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
teachers.
oh yeah.
Hey, listen, it's not too many people willing to pick up garbage for a living, so I met it.
Well, not a lot of people are willing to teach kids. Anyways, carry on.
There's a lot of people willing to teach kids.
A lot less.
Today. But there's still way more people who
People that
want
wanna
to
be-
teach kids.
Concur.
I don't care what nobody says. Try dating a girl, be like, I'm a garbage man. God bless your soul. You know what? I don't even think garbage men tell the truth about what they do for work when they date.
I
don't
mean,
think you can.
I think
working for the city fucking pays good though. Like, you get a city gig, you're gonna want to retire there because it's like consistent like wage increases at like set and predictable intervals. Like, you get a city job, you can just pretty much retire.
I don't think you can say that because there's no way socially that's
every
what people say.
garbage man says they're the driver.
Yeah.
I'm not in the back chucking that shit. I'm driving that bitch. He's not. He's not.
So what do you think he would say when he's being asked? What do you do for work? What do they say?
I'm a supervisor of sanitation.
Yo, all the garbage men. I need to see y'all in the comments. I'm actually mad curious. What y'all say when y'all be on these dates?
I'm supervisor of sanitation. I work for the city, which you could.
I work for the city.
I work for the city.
I work for the city.
Yeah, whenever you do a comedy show and people tell you I work for the city, what do? You know, city, you're a cop. You're a cop or you pick up the garbage. Both.
This is what I'll end up this whole conversation. Can YouTube or content creation be difficult? Yes.
Yes.
But it's as difficult as you make it.
True.
And therein lies the whole crux of this whole topic.
I mean, when you're
It's
making
as
millions,
difficult
it's like,
as you choose to make it. And if you want to ratchet up the difficulty to the ultimate percent to get the maximum amount reward, go right ahead. Just don't cry about it afterwards because you're well compensated for it. Content creation is not hard. It's many things. It could be time. Yup. Go ahead.
Time consuming. It could be emotionally draining if you don't go into the comments. It can be time consuming. Out here.
that's pretty much it.
It could rid you of a lot of your privacy.
Yeah.
Fair.
Depending on how you manage it, but sometimes, yeah, no, fair. Yeah.
Content creators, stop comparing it to regular jobs. You look stupid.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
The end.
Anything else?
No.
All right, guys, you can complain about your problems. Leave regular people out of it.
That was a pretty good video. I'll throw that one in the chat.
Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mudahar, and today we got to talk about, is gaming dying? Is gaming gonna crash again? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just really start off by saying that I love video games. I really do. My channel's name is Some Ordinary Gamers. I play video games, since I was a kid, and I still do to this day. One of my favorite video games very recently is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, okay? Yeah, it's a remake of Final Fantasy VII, I get it. But it's pretty much the vision that the original developers, I guess, wanted, and it's one that I appreciate. But this isn't a review of a video game. This is a talk about one of the biggest industries in entertainment that's currently being talked about. And the reason we're talking about it in such a weird, shaky way, if it's going to crash, is I don't know if you've been following, ladies and gentlemen. You probably have been. Gaming companies are laying off employees like the plague, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty bad right now. So, you might have heard literally like a day ago, our EA Games fired 670 workers, okay? They sunsetted games in production. Respawn literally lost a first-person shooter in the Star Wars franchise. We are literally sunsetting games from some of the biggest IPs that we know will sell millions upon millions of copies, right? And they're moving away from licensed IPs in the future. I guess they want to work on stuff on their own. Now, of course, that's just EA Games doing it, ladies and gentlemen. You've also got PlayStation. How many people did they lay off? 10, 20, 30? Nah, try 900 employees across some of the biggest studios imaginable. Even Sony was like, the PlayStation community means everything to us, so I felt it was important to update you on a difficult day at our company. We made the extremely hard decision to basically reduce the overall headcount of 8% globally. So 900 people over there subject to local law and consultation processes, blah, blah, blah. And what's insane about it too is like in the United Kingdom, an entire studio, the London studio, just completely closed, completely shut down. Reductions in Firespite Studios, reduction in a bunch of different areas. And of course, everyone is affected. So you could be a Naughty Dog, you could be an Insomniac, you're still getting thrown out. And it's funny because Insomniac literally made one of the highest selling games of like last year, Spider-Man 2, and they're still facing actual layoffs, even after making a boatload of cash for Sony and the industry in general, literally making one of the most top-selling games out there on the market. Now, of course, if you thought that Sony was maybe going through some hard times, no, even Microsoft, which, by the way, I think is the second largest company. If not, I think it might just be the first largest company in the entire world. The biggest corporation in the entire planet laid off 1,900 Activision employees, Xbox employees in general. So even the biggest company in the world also chopped off around 8% of its actual workforce. Literally because I guess they're going through some hard times, it seems. Now, the reason I guess everyone is saying that this is kind of a crash is because it's not normal, at least, to see all of these layoffs happening in unison, especially around the gaming and tech industry in general. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of factors in the situation. I'm not an expert, but obviously, I've been around this long enough to kind of...
Is there a better way of getting blood runes? This fucking sucks, dude. Every single world's sold out. Look at this shit. Oh my god, dude. My god.
See some of the signs. Obviously, during the period of COVID, during lockdown, during the pandemic, there was a whole period where these companies were making a lot of money because people were stuck inside their houses, and the gaming industry, and again, just entertainment in general, if you were like an influencer in this space, or if you were in like the gaming world, your numbers were higher than ever. You made a lot of money. You basically got to sit home with an audience that was also sitting at home, and that's the audience that all of these companies were catering to. And for a while, when the world went remote, hiring individuals to work on games was something I guess a lot of the industry really jumped into. Now, with the whole pandemic over and us returning back to that normal life we once had pre-2019, a lot of these companies are pulling people back into the actual offices. You literally had Rockstar Games pretty much tell the actual employees they had a month's notice to come back to the office because they're on the final stretch of working for GTA 6 and they were not going to risk any security issues, which is understandable, but that's the world that the world wants to return to. And obviously the entire gaming industry is kind of suffering from that reeling, right? Like obviously when you bring that many people in and now that, the world's back to normalcy, some of these video game sales, some of the engagement numbers may have slipped enough for these companies to realize maybe we need to scale back the workforce just so we can meet that same world we had pre-pandemic. That's about my analysis in the situation and what I see coming in. Now, I guess the question could be asked, Muda, is this a sign of another crash? Is the gaming industry about to die? Now, obviously, I think video games, if you've looked at them now, compared to 1983 when the video game crash happened, it's a little bit disingenuous. First off, the entire industry is way more mature than you could ever expect, okay? A lot more people play video games. It's not a kid's hobby anymore. There are adults, there are grandparents at this point that actually can fire up a computer or a video game console and are playing video games. There are millions of players every day on various different MMO games, shooters, and whatnot. Arguably, Call of Duty's probably never been as popular as it has been now. We might like to complain about it, but there's probably more players on Warzone than the people playing Call of Duty on the 360 PS3 generation in its entirety. A lot of people play video games, a lot more than you could ever expect. There is an entire industry of people who make millions upon millions of dollars a year streaming video game gameplay to people who are watching in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. It would be outright weird to say that gaming is going to die because there's just not enough engagement. Even sales-wise, video games continue to sell millions upon millions, if not billions of dollars for some specific games.
I have to look this scar thing up.
Hey guys, what is up? It is No Help and welcome back to another video today. So today the Scar Essence mine is out and we're gonna check it out. Okay, now basically what the Scar Essence mine is it's a way for Ironman accounts to collect a lot of bulk runes without having to do shop runs. So it's more of a quality of life fix and it costs a lot of money that I've heard. You also need to complete part of the new quest, the Desert Treasure 2, in order to use this method. So it does have fairly high requirements. Now, do you just talk to this guy and click travel, I believe, and you should be where you were in the quest anyways, and then you want to come up to here and go over to this area right here to enter the Scar Essence mine. So we're just going to be hopping over these two little stepping stones right here, and then I believe you just enter this passage right here. If we can, oh, there's a little jump for it. Okay. And then we should be able to enter the Scar Essence mine. I want to see how much a million GP will get us. I don't want to throw my whole bank towards this. I just want to check it out today. I'm going to start by just talking to Haggis here and going through all of the options to make sure that I have everything unlocked. Alright, so we're going to start by mining some of these Tainted Essence chunks. I'll just get a full inventory and see what we can do with these. Okay, so I believe we just deposit these into here, and it should say we now have 135 Tainted Essence stored within it. Okay, so this side right here, you can actually make Pure Essence, so 2 Tainted Essence into 1 Pure Essence. So let's see if we just do that. This is a cool way for Ironman accounts to actually collect Pure Essence. I like that a lot. Okay, so we're going to collect some more of these and actually make the real powerful items now. So I guess we can just deposit these back into here. And then this is where we actually get the extracts, but you need some coins in here. So we'll use the coffer and we'll deposit our 1 million GP into there. See how much this would get us. Okay, so we come up to here and then, so 1 Tainted Essence into 1 extract. Okay, so that's a fair price. So there is Warped Extracts, Twisted Extracts, Mangled, and Scarled? What the hell?
Scarred.
Jesus, I totally butchered that. It is scarred. Anyways, so the warped will make air, mind, water, earth, fire, and body. The twisted will make mystic, steam, dust, lava, mud, cosmic, smoke, and chaos. The mangled will make nature, law, astral, and death. And the scarred will make the blood, soul, and wrath runes. So I don't know, I'm going to start with the warped and make a bunch of the water runes. So this method is saying if you want the pure essence, you can make about 10,000 per hour fully focused. That's pretty good, especially if you need them on an Ironman. It also tells you how much coins it will cost per one of these. So basically, just the warped ones is only going to cost 1,250 coins per one of these. and then these ones come up all the way to 24,000 coins per. Okay, so I'm going to start by just grabbing 50 of these little warped extracts, and we'll see what that can get us. And as you can see right there, it shows that I've still got 937,000 coins within the coffer to use. So this does take a decent amount of money. These are the cheapest ones. The reason I'm doing water runes is because I'm dry out of them. So we're going to test it first without using the extracts, and then we will do it with the extracts. Okay, so this is like a regular rune crafting. Let's see how many water runes we can get per inventory here. Haven't done rune crafting in a very long time. So we get about 324 water runes per run. I really need to do that Guardians of the Rift minigame to get the outfit on this account, plus the Colossal Pouch and stuff like that. I haven't had time to do it on this account. But anyways, we got the warped extracts now, and let's see how many water runes we get. It's gonna be hell of a, oh my good god. Look how,
Oh, that's nice.
look at that. 12,000 water runes. We had 300 before, and now we had 12,000. But we used all of those extracts, which is interesting. Yeah, we're going to go back and make a lot more. And you do get not a lot, but a little bit of mining experience for mining these out as well. So, I mean, that can help, especially if you're going for max or something. Every little bit of experience helps. So also on this chart, it's going to show the bonus runes per pure essence. So that's why these gave so much, 250 extra runes per pure essence. And the rest are only 60, but still that's a lot. Like imagine 60 extra nature runes, 60 extra wrath runes, blood runes. That's insane. Okay, so we got another 150 warped, and then we bought 31 of these ones, which that's almost my entire cash stack now, but I'm going to use these for the wrath runes. I think you can't buy
Why am I missing a large pouch? What the fuck?
wrath runes anywhere either. I think you can only get them from like boss drops, so I was gonna have to spend a lot of time crafting these because I use them for the demonic offering spell all of the time. I forget actually even how to get here. It's been so long. There's an entrance. Oh, there's a cave right there. But yeah, I was planning on spending a while actually crafting these, but yeah.
How do you even get there?
EP will get us. I don't want to throw my whole bank towards this. I just want to check it out today. I'm going to start by just talking to Haggis here and going through all of the options to make sure that I have everything unlocked. Alright, so we're going to start by mining some of these so we're just going to be hopping over these two little stepping stones right here. And then I believe you just enter this passage right here. If we can, oh, there's a little jump for it. Okay. And then we should be able to enter the Scar Essence mine. I want to see how much a million GP will get us. I don't want to throw my whole bank towards this. I just want to check it out today. I'm going to start by just talking to Haggis here and going through all of the options to make sure that I have everything unlocked.
this fucking NPC is not very helpful. Fucking giving me attitude at every fucking question. Okay, let's just fucking mine shit. Oh my god, I gotta talk to this guy, dude. Yeah, I'm not reading all this shit. I'll just figure it out.
All right, so we're going to start by mining some of these tainted essence chunks. I'll just get a full inventory and see what we can do with these. Okay, so I believe we just deposit these into here, and it should say we now have 135 tainted essence stored within it. Okay, so this side right here, you can actually make pure essence. So 2 tainted essence into 1 pure essence. So let's see if we just do that. This is a cool way for Ironman accounts to actually collect pure essence. I like that a lot.
Do I need pure
Okay,
essence?
so we're gonna collect some more of these and actually make the real powerful items now. So I guess we can just deposit these back into here. And then this is where we actually get the extracts, but you need some coins in here. So we'll use the coffer and we'll deposit our 1 million GP into there. See how much this would get us. Okay, so we come up to here and then so
This extractor converts 1 tainted essence into 1 extract. Okay.
one tainted essence into 1 extract. Okay, so that's a fair price. So there is warped extracts, twisted extracts, mangled, and scarled. What the hell? Jesus, I totally butchered that. It is scarred. Anyways, so the warped will make air, mind, water.
We want scarred. Damn, that's taking all my fucking coins. Okay, well, alright. right.
water, earth, fire, and body. The twisted will make mystic, steam, dust, lava, mud, cosmic, smoke, and chaos. The mangled will make nature, law, astral, and death. And the scarred will make the blood, soul, and wrath runes. So I don't know. I'm going to start with the warped and make a bunch of the water runes. So this method is saying if you want the pure essence, you can make about 10,000 per hour fully focused. That's pretty good, especially if you need them on an Ironman. It also tells you how much coins it will cost per one of these. So basically, just the warped ones is only going to cost 1,250 coins per one of
You
these.
even need essence,
And then
though?
these ones come up all the way to 24,000 coins per. Okay, so I'm going to start by just grabbing 50 of these little warped extracts, and we'll see what that can get us. And as you can see right there, it shows that I've still got 937,000 coins within the coffer to use. So this does take a decent amount of money. These are the cheapest ones. The reason I'm doing water runes is because I'm dry out of them. So we're going to test it first without using the extracts, and then we will do it with the extracts. Okay, so this is like a regular rune crafting. Let's see how many water runes we can get per inventory here. Haven't done rune crafting in a very long time. So we get about 324 water runes per run. I really need to do that Guardians of the Rift minigame to get the outfit on this account, plus the colossal pouch and stuff like that. I haven't had time to do it on this account. But anyways, we got the warped extracts now. Let's see how many water runes we get. It's gonna be hell of a, oh my good god. Look at that. 12,000 water runes.
Do you need to use essence with it, though? Oh my god, I gotta look this shit up. I actually don't even remember the route, really, for this. Wait. I think it's down this way. I think. I don't remember. Oh my fucking god. God damn it, dude. This is so fucking stupid. Okay, yeah, this is the way. Oh my god. Yeah, fuck this right now.